Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connotateur de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Brelard.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connotateur de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connotateur de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Southern. Madame le deputy Labby.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Luce.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Dublé. Monsieur le deputy Morel. Madame le deputy Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Ward.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Owls.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Gardner. Monsieur le deputy Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Farnham. Madame le deputy Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Mezek. Monsieur le deputy Joseph. Monsieur le deputy Balash. Monsieur le deputy Coles. Madame le deputy Poré. Monsieur le deputy War.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Miles.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Curtis. Madame le deputy Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Binet.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Miller.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Howe. Monsieur le deputy Binet. Monsieur le deputy Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Kovac. Monsieur le deputy Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Ward.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Wilson. Madame le deputy Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don du conseil des prudences, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est un combiné de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être du jugement du peuple, qu'il te plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le deputy Southern.
Défaut.
Madame le deputy Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Farnham.
Défaut.
Monsieur le deputy Joseph. Monsieur le deputy Balash.
Défaut.
Monsieur le deputy Coles.
Sir, I ask Deputy Coles could be excused. He's got a doctor's appointment. He should be here as soon as he can finish his doctor's appointment.
Members content to mark the deputy excusez? Excusez.
Madam Deputy Kovac.
Sir, Deputy Kovac emailed members last week to explain that she'd be off island on parental responsibilities and asked if she could be marked excuse A.
Members content to mark Deputy Kovac excuse? Excuse.
So,
Les états sont constitués. Deputy Joseph.
Deputy Balash was a defo, but he did email States members to say that he was going to be out of the island on a close family funeral. And so I think in those circumstances, if the Assembly could consider that he is marked defo excuse for the reasons he set out in his email to members.
Members content to mark Deputy Balash excuse?
So I did communicate with Deputy Balash, and he feels that his trip to the UK, although to a funeral, is a personal choice, and he was content to be marked as defo. So.
In case he remains on defo.
Sir, please can I raise the defo on Deputy Southern?
Yes, members content the defo should be raised. The defo is raised on Deputy Southern.
So,
Deputy Morell.
apologies. I was just wondering if it is a good time now to ask the Assembly about requesting a reduced lodging period for P51.
Well, I was going to come on to that at the beginning of public business later on.
That's
It's
fair
not
enough.
been
We'll do
forgotten.
that later. Thank you.
On behalf of members, I'd like to welcome His Excellency to the Chamber this morning. Moving to the order paper, there are a number of subordinate enactments under B and documents presented or laid under C. The following propositions have been lodged, listed under D. P48, meanwhile use of the former Gas Place site amendment lodged on the 1st of July by Deputy Alex Curtis. P50, joined up public infrastructure framework for an ageing population amendment lodged on the 4th of July by the Council of Ministers. P53, draft sea fisheries minimum size limits amendment regulations lodged on the 26th of June by the Minister of the Environment. P54, supplementary planning guidance parking lodged on the 1st of July by the Connétable of St Helier. P55, draft children and civil status consequential amendment, Jersey Amendment number 2 regulation, lodged on the 3rd of July by the Minister for Children and Families. There is nothing under E. Under F, in accordance with Standing Order 118, the Assembly is due to appoint a new chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. I invite members to make nominations for the chair of that committee. Are there any nominations? St. Peter.
There also, I would like to propose Deputy Steve Ayer.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Thank you. In most circumstances, I invite Deputy Ayer to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which there'll be a period of questions of up to 20 minutes. Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. So I would like to thank the Constable of St Peter's for proposing me and for the outgoing chair of PPC for seconding my nomination for this position. It would be remiss of me not to thank the Constable of St Martin's for her diligent work over the past 3 years and her perseverance in the face of considerable challenges, which she has borne with resolution and determination. We should all be grateful to her for her contribution and achievements in her role, which have been numerous. In putting my name forward for this position, I am aware that it will be for a short period of tenure, with the next general election less than a year away. Yet I believe that I have the support and trust of members to fulfil what can only be described as an interim role. Since the chair has stood down, it means that the current committee falls away and will need to be reconstituted. This can be an arduous process, but I believe that I will be able to organise the formation of the next committee in reasonably short order. It would be problematic to excessively alter the makeup of the PPC, especially when considering the subcommittees, which have already encountered one upheaval after the vote of no confidence. It would be ill-advised to seek major change to them at this time. Therefore, if elected, I would propose to retain the current members of the subcommittees to maintain consistency and allow the work streams to continue, which are doing marvellous work, without further interruption. A good deal of the work the PPC does revolves around the election process, and this is doubly so with the 2026 election fast approaching. Recently, the Policy Centre Jersey held an early morning meeting on the upcoming election, where the conversation revolved around the consistently low levels of turnout for elections in Jersey. It was highlighted that of those who do vote, 53% of them are 65 years of age and over. I'm sure members do not need to be reminded that Jersey is bottom of the International League table for turnout. It seems as though our residents are indifferent to their democratic right to vote. What I found most interesting was the sparsity of attendees. I have attended a number of the Policy Centre's discussion mornings, and I cannot praise the organisation enough for their presentations. But on this occasion, attendance was poor, which only exemplifies the mountain which we have to climb, especially with the advancement of the automatic voter registration, which will inevitably lead to a lower percentage of total voter turnout. We must try to encourage the youth of today to engage in the election process. This has been continually encouraged in the Youth Assembly and through our schools, but it also has to come from parents through conversations around the dinner table. That is, if families actually have dinner tables these days. When I was a child, politics was regularly discussed at home. And on the occasion of an island-wide election, my father would drive us around to the various polling stations to hear firsthand what the results were. This would commence in St Mary's and would then head east through the country parishes, ending in our then parish hall of St Saviour. Trying to revive that sort of enthusiasm will be difficult to invoke in this modern age, but starting the conversation by reaching out to as many people as possible in all walks of life is one of the primary functions of PPC, and hopefully we will gradually be able to push up our voting figures. We have just last month seen an election in Guernsey, where they claimed a 72% turnout. This needs some explanation, because only 27,000 people registered to vote out of a population of 64,000. So the figure is deceptive, and I am sure that we will be able to achieve similar numbers come next June. There are a number of work streams that PPC are conducting at this time. The one which affects all members and is most imminent is P35, the revised Code of Conduct for the States Assembly. The purpose of the code is to assist members in the discharge of their obligations to the states, their constituents, and the public of Jersey. This is a result of consultation with members, and it is to be remembered that we should be voting to determine our own guidelines, which are published as an addendum. Some members may believe that these guidelines are too onerous, and it is important that we have a constructive debate before we accept what all members will need to conform to in the future. Where the Code of Conduct has been breached, sanctions may be brought against that member. This is an unenviable task, but one that I will use when it becomes necessary if serious breaches have been committed. Another area which needs to be addressed by the PPC is the e-petition system, which has come in for considerable criticism in some parts of our community. It can easily be misinterpreted that when a substantial number of signatures are received for a petition, that this will lead to a vote in this chamber on that issue. Of course, members will be aware that this is not the case and that it only triggers the possibility of an in-committee debate without any formal decision being taken. The last petition to reach the 5,000 threshold was make states' old age pensions exempt from tax, and this was debated in November of last year. Many members of the public did not believe that their concerns were adequately addressed, and I personally had first-hand feedback from the community when I handed out leaflets at Charing Cross, along with the Constable of St Martin and Deputy Coles, to try to get more feedback for our consultation into the e-petition system. Responses to our exercise were not overwhelmingly positive, with pensioners particularly aggrieved at what they perceived to be the State's Assembly not taking their objections seriously. Therefore, I believe that a fundamental change needs to take place to ensure that the petition system remains relevant and that outcomes from successful petitions are suitably addressed to the satisfaction of those who took the time and effort to support them. Something which concerns many members and that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later is the as yet unresolved issue of P63, remote participation in states meetings, which was debated at length in December of last year. Due to what I can only describe as a confusion, P63 was referenced back, and it will be my unenviable task to ensure that when it does return for debate in this Assembly, we do not encounter such disputation. Since then, PPC has conducted a survey of members, which received a high level of responses, and we have taken on board members' views to try to ensure its smooth passage when it comes back to the Assembly. There are many other work streams that PPC has in the pipeline that are of equal importance, but I will leave my remarks there. Sir, it is common practice at this point to say that I look forward to members' questions, but I would rather finish by commenting that 20 minutes can be a long time in politics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the candidate for putting his name forward for this task. My question relates to the Commissioner for Standards, and I'd just like to get the candidate's view on how the relationship with the Commissioner for Standards is working.
Deputy.
I thank the Deputy for his question. Thus far, I think the relationship between the PPC and the Commissioner has been very good. I understand that there are some concerns about the processes, and this may be what the questioner is alluding to, but as far as I'm concerned, the relationship is very good, and I do not foresee any problems with it currently.
One last supplementary question?
Supplementary, sir. Does the candidate have any ideas of how the relationship could be improved?
Deputy.
As I said, there doesn't seem to be much to be addressed currently. There are some issues about concerns about the appeals process, but that is from members rather than the direct relationship with the Commissioner. I don't really believe that I can add too much. I think our relationship is very good. It's been conducted on a very good basis, and I have no reason to question it continuing into the future.
Deputy Labby.
Thank you, sir. Given the Deputy's known views on the island-wide mandate, how enthusiastically will he be bringing forward the legislation to ensure it's in place for the next election?
Deputy.
I thank the Deputy for her question. Obviously, this is relating to the senatorial election. And she is right to state that it is well known that I'm opposed to the concept of having 3 different types of election on the same day. We spent nearly 70 years in total trying to change the electoral system and eventually, through concessions being made by many members of the Assembly, we managed to bring in a type of election whereby we had the deputies in districts and retaining all the constables for the 2022 election, which was a great step forward. And unfortunately, as has been mentioned, I do disagree with the concept of bringing back 3 types of election on the same day. But having said that, of course, we have had the debate. 25 members of the Assembly determined that it was a sensible way to move forward, and I'm absolutely one who upholds democracy. And obviously the Deputy may not have noticed, but we had a meeting of PPC yesterday where we went over the regulations which have been drafted, and they have now been lodged. So we're obviously very pleased about that, because obviously the timeline is very, very short. So that will be coming for debate in September, and I will be presenting the law, which the law drafters have spent a good deal of time. There were some complications, and I would like to mention to members that be very careful if you're considering bringing amendments, because the law itself is quite complicated, and making changes to that law will be quite difficult. Thank you.
Supplementary?
So may I just raise the DEFO and Deputy Farnham, please?
Yes, the defo is raised. Yes.
No, I'd just like to thank the Deputy for his reassurances.
Thank you. Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. Just congratulate the Deputy in his new role. Can I ask, I was very pleased to hear him talk about the importance of, in particular, young people voting on the island. I have mentioned before in this Assembly I would like to see a pre-poll for young people, offer facilities perhaps up at Highlands or in that area. Would the Chair of PPC be supportive of opening a pre-poll in the areas where young people are every single day up to the election in order to increase their motivation to vote? Thank you, sir.
Deputy.
Yeah, I thank the Deputy for the question. That's an interesting question, and it does raise the wider matter of polling stations in Jersey generally. This is something that PPC is working hard to try to solve, along with Deputy Alves, who has a close interest in this matter. Whether we could have a polling station close to young people, it does make some sense, but there may be complications in it, because obviously all the children will be coming from different parishes. And this brings us back to the problem of having that ability for all islanders to walk into any polling station and being able to vote in that one place. But I'm not against the concept that the Deputy proposes.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I was suggesting to the Chair of PPC, the Chair-elect, I don't know what the phrase is, that we, just as we run a pre-poll for all members on the island, all voters on the island around, it was at St Paul's before and it's been in Moria House, we could run a pre-poll nearer to the colleges and the schools where there'll be many people voting, which takes away the problem of which parish they're in, but just acts as a pre-poll that anyone can access, but in particular young people, to encourage them to vote.
Deputy.
Sorry for that slight misunderstanding. So the pre-poll that we have in St Paul's did seem to be quite a success, but there are a sparsity of voters. It's not a continual stream, and there is a suggestion that we should widen that base to try to have 2, so that we've got 1 in St Helier and maybe 1 out east. Now, again, if we had an additional one, for example, at Highlands or someplace like that, it would have to be manned for a long period of time, and there may be complications. So I'm not against it in principle. If we had the helpers who were willing to do it, that could be a good idea. And like you say, to get that engagement from the youth of the island would be beneficial. Thank you.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And first of all, obviously, congratulations to Deputy I for his upcoming appointment. My question is around proactive approaches towards getting our young people to vote. I've been sort of emailed a lot of schools recently in connection with my meanwhile use proposition. And most of the schools came back and said, I'm sorry, we can't fit you in because it's doesn't fit into our curriculum. We're too busy with our curriculum. One school, however, did say positively and got involved. And however, when I went up to see these students, the students didn't actually know what the assembly did, had no idea. Now, my concern is that the GREF are currently spending an awful lot of money engaging with schools, trying to give this information, and I'm just worried that it's not getting through. So what alternative proactive approaches does the Deputy think need to be encouraged to make sure that our youth are more engaged in the political system?
Deputy.
Well, I thank the Deputy for his question, and I also thank him for his engagement going out to the schools, and I know a number of other members have done the same. There's been a request by the GREF to ask members to try to attend the different schools at different times and engage as many members, as many youngsters as possible. We already have of course, the Youth Assembly, the Youth Parliament. There is lots of engagement with young people, and how we can extend that, there's always the possibility of trying to extend it, but how much more we can actually do to bring back that engagement from the young people of today, I'm not so sure how much extra we can do.
Deputy Tadeo.
Thanks, sir. The Chair-elect made it quite clear that he's not in favour of 3 categories of States members, yet the States Assembly seems to be, this current one, in the majority. Is it a problem that the committee that he's proposing has a majority of those who voted against bringing back senators?
And again, I'd like to reassure, and especially I can see Deputy Miller sneering at me across the room. Yeah, no, absolutely, it's not a problem at all. We, the PPC, and obviously the PPC will be elected by this Assembly. I will not appoint the members myself. It will be up to the Assembly to decide who is on that committee. So currently we do not know how many will have voted for Deputy Miller's proposition and who did not vote for Deputy Miller's proposition. But I can assure the Deputy that this proposition will be put forward. I have no problem whatsoever bringing it forward, whether I voted for it previously or not. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Sir, the candidate-elect also said that he didn't support 3 different types of election on the same day. Does that mean he's open to some of those elections being on a different day?
Deputy.
Obviously, that's a personal opinion question. I don't mind answering it because, no, I do not believe that they should be on different days. I think that if people are determined to have a vote for senators as an island-wide senatorial vote, then it has to be on the same day. The argument could be made, as perhaps the deputies implying, that you should bring an amendment to have all the different votes on all different days, so you'd have the senatorial election first, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the next election, which would be the deputies' election, so that those people who stood for senator who didn't get in could then stand for deputy, and then you'd have another 3-week break after the deputy election, and you'd have the constables' elections to ensure that those who didn't get in as deputy could then stand for constable. I don't think that would be a good idea. I don't think that would look well in the eyes of the public. So no, I would not support the concept of having it on a different day.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Would the candidate explain or say whether he believes that, in my words, tinkering with the electoral system is in any way helpful to encouraging more islanders to vote?
Deputy.
No, unfortunately, I do not believe that it's beneficial. The sort of the campaign, as it were, for promotion of the election in 2026 has already started from the GREF, and we are still unsure as to what that system of voting will be. As I've said, obviously the proposition to bring back senators has been lodged and will be debated, but that will not be debated till September, and so it will not be determined for sure what the electoral system's going to be till October this year. And then obviously the GREF and the PPC as well will then have to go out and change all the materials and make various adjustments to the process of the election to accommodate that change. So I do not think it's beneficial personally.
Supplementary.
Sir, when I said tinkering, I didn't just mean with the senatorials, I also meant with automatic voter registration, whether it's pre-polls or others. Work of PPC is often, to my perspective, seems to be just trying to change various parts of our electoral process in order to encourage more people to vote. But given that the candidate said he didn't think that tinkering helped, could he explain to the Assembly what measures he does think PPC could undertake, whether that's engagement with schools, whether that's encouraging deputies and constables to engage with islanders more directly? What does he think will help encourage islanders to vote more?
Deputy.
I think the one thing that would encourage islanders to vote is making it easier to vote, making it easier for everyone to access a polling station, making it easier for people to turn up at those polling stations and being accepted quickly, and not having too many complications about saying, well, which parish are you in, where are you voting? And I know that's an advancement that will not be in place for the next election, but that sort of computerization of the voting system, so that to make it much easier to count the votes as well, of course, so that the result would be published much quicker, that would be hugely beneficial. And I think that would encourage more people, if they knew that it was a simple process, to turn out to vote.
Debbie Scott.
Thank you, sir. Following on from Deputy Morell's question, will the new chair accept that the reason why the public are disengaging in terms of the voting process is to do with a lack of trust, that their vote will, as far as they're concerned, make no difference? And will he be considering ways in which the PPC might actually generate more trust, whether it's in terms of making the code of conduct more user-friendly, making the PPC more active in its enforcement, or even in terms of doing more so that states members can be more coordinated and more active in responding to emails from the public?
Deputy.
Thank you for the Deputy's question. Yes, the lack of trust. Well, I'm not too sure if that is real or perceived. I know there have been some polls conducted which say there is a good deal of lack of trust in states members. And of course, that does lead on rather to the code of conduct and to behaviours of some which are not looked kindly on by members of the public. And this all reverts back to the progression of the code of conduct, which I mentioned in my original speech, which will be brought to this Assembly. And I'm sure that the Deputy herself will have plenty to say, and maybe will wish to bring amendments to the code of conduct, which is perfectly within her remit. And hopefully, once the code of conduct has been published, we should be able to work on the possible lack of trust of some members. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. The Deputy didn't quite... I'm just interested to know whether he has no faith in the stats jersey in terms of a unit, in terms of producing stats regarding the lack of trust in the state's members in terms of government constitutions. But more than that, just I have said that it's been identified that people think that their vote makes no difference, that people don't answer emails, that there is that lack of engagement. What might he be thinking about doing in that respect?
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Yes, on the response to emails, this did actually come up in our PPC meeting yesterday, and it was concerning the emails that we now receive that are addressed to all states members. And the lack of response, which I think the Deputy is referring, can be because members believe that if an email is directed to a particular minister and is sent to all members of the States Assembly, it is not upon them to respond to it, rather it is upon the minister to respond to it. Now, we could argue that it should be every single member who should give a reply, but I would imagine that if that was the case, the reply would be, please refer your query to the minister. So there is a complication with the way members of the public's emails are directed. And if they were more targeted and directed to the right people, then I think that more responses and more accurate responses would be received by the members of the public. Thank you.
Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think it's a reasonable assumption to make that some of us in this Assembly today won't be here next July. Some of us won't be here because we will retire, and some of us won't be here because we fail at the ballot box. But those two categories will be treated different way financially by this Assembly. Those who choose to retire will receive no reward, while those who fail at the ballot box will be paid a financial return. Does the candidate have a view on this?
Deputy.
I do understand where the deputy is coming from, because this has been raised. The deputy has raised it previously. It is to do with the compensation and the years of service served when that person retires, steps down, or is actually removed from the ballot box. Yes, this is a complex problem, and it was obviously determined that there were strict guidelines that would arranged around it. I would be happy to re-look at this, but obviously it's not directly within my remit. It's because it's been taken out of my hands. But there is a concern that for a couple of members who have long service histories, they will not receive as much compensation as they would have done if they would have retired a couple of assemblies ago. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? One last question, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you. I would like to check with the candidate if he heard about Age Concerns approach Gref and ask if it's possible to arrange pre-poll at Age Concerns. They have 500 members. Some of them are not able to get to the polling stations because they come to Age Concern for their daily visit. So would the candidate consider to engage with Age Concern or Good Companions and to explore what are options for their members to easy get to the vote station?
You've got 10 seconds, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And this is a very good question, actually. We do need to encourage the elderly people to vote and to have the ability to get to the polling station or to postal ballot, which is obviously makes it slightly easy for them. But unfortunately, as referred back to the Deputy Ward's question, there are a limited number of polling booths that we can actually set up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. That completes the period of questions. I can confirm that Deputy Iyer has been selected for appointment as Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. We now move to appointment of the members of the committee. If you're ready to proceed today, Deputy, which it appears from your speech that you are. In accordance with Standing Order 122, the Assembly is due to appoint members of the committee, and in accordance with Standing Order 1221, I invite the new chair of PPC to make from elected members who are not ministers or assistant ministers 3 nominations for membership of the PPC. Chair.
I apologise, sir, that due to conversations with the PPC, and with the GREF, would it be possible to defer this till after lunch?
Or indeed tomorrow.
Or tomorrow morning would be
Tomorrow's
wonderful.
absolutely fine.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes,
Thank you.
Fine. All right, thank you. There are no matters under G or H. There are a number of written questions to which responses have been provided. We now come to oral questions. There are 18, just under 8 minutes for each question. And again, I want to ensure, if at all possible, that we reach the end of questions today. And I invite Deputy Catherine Curtis to put the first question to the Minister for Education, and lifelong learning. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Further to the recent increases in education grants to distance learning degree students, and in light of the possible increase in students choosing this option and higher dropout rates associated with remote learning, will the Minister detail what in-person support, if any, is being considered for students?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. So I'm pleased to confirm there will be local in-person support for distant learners for students studying by distance learning. Students can access in-person face-to-face support locally from Skills Jersey, who offer a range of services to all local residents, including those studying remotely.
Supplementary.
Yes, and I thank the Minister for that answer. Has the Minister carried out research into how many students studying by distance learning will be dependent students or independent students?
Minister.
No, sir. That figure probably exists because of funding applications. So there were 11 applications for distance learning this year, 12 last year, so the numbers slightly decreased. So they are small numbers, so that shouldn't be an issue in terms of that information. So thank you.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister outline the rationale for making changes to the grant system so that the maximum student grant for distance learning courses available is now nearly the same as the grant for in-person learning?
Minister.
Thank you. Yes, sir. It's to increase access to education. Distance learning is a way in which people can access education that perhaps they couldn't before. They could spread it over a longer time. They may not have had the opportunity the first time. They may have commitments at home. They may not suit in-person learning, and they may be able to access a course, a high-quality course, which they couldn't before. So there are a myriad of reasons to level the playing field, so to speak.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Has there been any consultation with Highlands College to understand the impact on University College Jersey degrees of this change?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, there's constant dialogue, but so we have to be realistic about what we're offering here. As I said, there were 11 people applied this year for distance learning. It's not huge numbers. I don't see it as a significant impact on Highlands College and their degrees. They are very different degrees, social work, for example, and degrees that are, if you like, tailored more to being in person. But what this does is it widens the access to higher education for many people on this island. Those who want to learn by distance learning, stay on the island, may well be more likely to stay on the island to use their skills as well. So I think that's an important advantage of this small change.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. What extra support is provided or is being considered to be provided to students who may have additional needs and choose to pursue distance learning? And is that different to what's offered to those who go away to study?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So there will be similarity in support needed. Guidance on course selection, whether distance learning is right fit for the student is supplied. Mentoring support to help students structure their studies and stay on track. Signposting to local services such as counselling and mental health support. Careers advice, including connections with local employers to help students gain work experience and explore job opportunities are some of the things that are there. So I have a bit more detail as well in terms of the requirements of the courses, but I think I might go on a little bit too long. I'll leave that for a supplementary. Thanks.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't clear if the Minister was saying that that's what's available to everybody, support for everyone with distance learning, because my question had been about those with additional needs who may choose to do distance learning, because we may find that there are more who would want to do that because it's easier. The reason I ask is that some of these students with additional needs will go from having one-to-one support and a record of need at school to potentially having no extra support if they choose to go off island to university or potentially pursue distance learning. And I'd just like to know the Minister's opinion on this. It certainly seems to me that there is scope for this to be looked at and potentially improved. And would he agree to take this away and look at it, please?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. A record of need, I believe, goes up to the age of 18. Whether that should be extended up to the age of 25 across our society is a very good question, but that would go out of the education remit and into some form of social security support. So I will say that eligible for distance learning grant, the qualification must be awarded by an institution regulated within the British Islands. And I'm going to read this so I get this right. This requirement ensures that students receive a high quality education that meets the regulatory standards set for higher education in the UK. These standards place a clear obligation on providers to support students throughout their studies, helping them succeed academically and reducing the risk of early withdrawal. This includes, in practice, access to wellbeing services such as counselling, personal tutoring, along with high-quality learning resources like online libraries, virtual labs and robust digital platforms, all of which help providers meet their obligations. And recently, so we did have communication with the Open University to look at the way in which they support one-to-one, particularly those students with additional needs. And the change in distance learning and how that happens has been significant in the last few years. And it's one of the reasons I'm confident to say that supporting people with distance learning can actually happen now. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister see this plan, the increase in distance learning maintenance grants, leading to fewer students going away to study?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. It's very difficult to tell. I think we had an increase in distance learning during COVID, and I know the UK has seen a decrease in that recently since COVID has sort of got into the background and not disappeared entirely. And I think that's one of the reasons we've had an increased dropout rate as well, which seems to be levelling up a little bit now, sir. I don't think it's about whether more students will be taking the option. I want students to take the option that is right for them. And if distance learning means that somebody can access a degree over a longer period of time whilst working, whilst supporting a family, then I think that's a really positive move forward. I don't think it will make a significant difference for those who perhaps stereotypically at the age of 18 want to go straight to do a degree, because distance learning is a particular type of learning that is usually fitting around people's lifestyles. So I don't see a significant increase, but we will track that. And as I say, this year there was a slight decrease in numbers, but we'll see how that goes with the increased support. So,
thank you, Minister. Question 2, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister detail any items of new expenditure that have been implemented since she became Minister, and any cost savings she has delivered within her areas of responsibility?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Since becoming Minister, I've sought to maintain the value of existing benefits as well as implement new schemes to support and respond to the needs of islanders and implement the decisions of this Assembly. These decisions are set within legislation and approved cash limits, with press releases and official documents setting out the details. In particular, some actions have been in direct response to the Assembly decisions made in this chamber. New areas of expenditure are the provision of free leg wound dressings in the community, improved support for victims of domestic abuse, increased support for parents with newborn babies needing hospital care, as well as additional support for parents with very sick children of any age, and the Registered Employee Support Scheme. In terms of savings, the Chief Officer of the Employment, Social Security and Housing Department has fully delivered her cost savings as part of the approved government budget. In 2025, this is £678,000 of savings, made up of staff savings, office savings and reductions in budgets allocated to previous growth areas. In 2024, the departmental savings were £258,000 as agreed in the budget.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Does the Minister have a figure available for the new level of expenditure that she has delivered upon since she became the Minister?
Minister.
Sir, as Minister for Social Security, I hold political responsibility for annual benefit spend of over £550 million. For me to detail such things would take far longer than I have available in my oral question. I would refer the Deputy to the Government's annual reports and also my departmental business plans, and if he wishes to have more detail, perhaps I suggest a written question.
Thank you. Question 3, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the progress of the new Heritage and Antiquities Law, including when he intends to bring it to the Assembly?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, I'm pleased to say that the draft Heritage and Antiquities Law is nearing its final state, and subject to a couple of more conversations that I aim to have, we hope to be going out to public consultation before the end of the summer, ahead of lodging the law in Q4 this year.
Supplementary.
Can the Minister provide a little more detail on the consultation that he proposes to be undertaking, and is he confident that, given that need for consultation and the potential for scrutiny to call the matter in, that it will be passed before the end of this term?
Deputy.
So the aim is absolutely to have the legislation passed before the end of this term. Consultation has been ongoing for some time with key groups such as the Société Générale or the National Trust of Jersey, as well as obviously Jersey Heritage, being consulted with and involved in different ways. And so the public consultation will be to that wider public base. And yes, we see that we should absolutely aim to get this over the line before the end of this term.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. And I just wonder if the Minister could just expand a little more on the requirements that have led to extended consultation on this law in particular.
Minister.
So if I could just refer back, what does the Deputy mean by requirements?
Yes, Deputy, can you clarify?
Yes, the Minister suggested that there was a great deal of consultation required to ensure the law was fit for purpose, and just understanding ultimately what led to a robust consultation process, whether it's complexities in the law or whatever,
I thank the Deputy for his clarification, sir. So I don't recall saying that we needed long and lengthy consultation. I just said we'd be going to public consultation, sir. But this is a heritage law that Jersey doesn't have at the moment, sir. And indeed, we have been seeking, I believe, as the States Assembly and as the government of Jersey, to bring in a heritage law for the last 20 or 30 years. Our existing approach relies heavily on customary law and unwritten conventions, which do not provide sufficient clarity or protection, which perhaps is where the requirements the Deputy is referring to are. In recent years, with the finding of the Le Chatillon II hoard and the lack of statutory framework to manage the find, there has been a desire, certainly on my part, to bring forward comprehensive legislation. When this is proposed, this law is intended to protect and preserve Jersey's rich archaeological heritage and recognise the importance of archaeological objects, not only as part of the island's collective memory, but also as valuable resources for historical and scientific research. So the law, when it's brought in, sir, if the Assembly chooses to adopt it, will make provision for the reporting, recording and preservation of archaeological objects significant to Jersey, as well as a clear process for the determination of objects as Jersey national treasure and the requirement for the Minister to issue a code of practice. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
I thank the Minister for those clarifications. I wonder, he's talked about the fact that the consultation process with relevant stakeholders has been slightly protracted. Can he specify any changes that have been required as a result of that consultation process so far?
Minister.
Sir, I'm not able to bring any to mind as we go. The process has been ongoing. We have had many drafts of this law. I believe, off the top of my head, we've had something like 19 or 20 drafts of this law already, sir. So it has been a process. But as I said in my response to Deputy Curtis, we are taking something which is currently entirely written, or not written as the case may be, within customary law, and trying to bring that into statute. And that is a complex process. There are Crown rights as well, which are important in this, sir. and something which I feel need to be dealt with in an appropriate manner and understood and consulted with in the appropriate manner as well. So we're bringing something which hasn't had a law about it in a statutory term for the first time, and it is complex. We're also, if I may just quickly add, sir, a lot of people will focus on things such as treasure and the idea of treasure, but so we're bringing forward the idea of objects which are of importance to Jersey's national heritage, which are not necessarily treasure and valuable in themselves, but are just valuable from a financial perspective in themselves, but have other value as well. That will be dealt with in this law as well, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Doublé will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister please advise what states-funded fee-paying schools and also independent fee-paying schools are required to provide in respect of special educational needs support for primary and secondary school students?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. States-funded fee-paying schools, listed as provided schools in Jersey Education Law, must adhere to the Jersey Code of Practice for pupils with SEN. For those pupils who they offer a place, it's important to note that states-funded fee-paying schools manage their own admissions, that's carbon dioxide, admissions. It's recommended that grant-funded schools adhere to the guidance of the Jersey SEN Code of Practice, but it's not a legal requirement. But however, they do have to go through a process of via their service level agreement if they apply for exceptional action, which leads to a record of need. And it is recommended that private schools adhere to the guidance of the SEN Code of Practice, but there's no statutory requirement for them to do that as they're entirely private.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his answer, and he mentioned the Jersey Code of Practice for pupils with SEN. Are all schools adhering to this, and are they all given sufficient support to do so?
Sorry, sir, I didn't hear the last bit. Sorry, apologies.
Well, I don't know what's happening. I'm not touching anything. I'm just listening in and trying to watch. So, I mean, on the thing here where you once pointed to me where the...
Sorry, can we... Is there someone remotely present who's... Yes, Conrad St Clement, we can hear you talking about something to somebody else. Perhaps you can mute yourself. Yes, can you repeat your question?
I will,
the last
sir.
part of it anyway.
Thank you. The Minister mentioned the Jersey Code of Practice for pupils with SEN. Can the Minister confirm that he is assured that all schools are adhering to this, that are required to, and indeed are all schools given enough support to do so?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I think the question around SEN support and whether schools ever have enough is a very good question. As Education Minister, I think it would be remiss of me to not always want more from my schools and for SEN funding. As for the Code of Practice, it is clear to schools. I very much hope that they are adhering to the Code of Practice. If there are individual cases, then of course they will be raised. Around the area of SEN, sir, and the complexity, there will always be situations that are difficult, and we will always have to deal with those on a case-by-case basis. But all schools, I believe, strive to provide the best possible support that they can for all of their students. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And as Minister mentioned funding, would the Minister accept that when primary fee-paying schools receive only 22% of funding for SEN compared to the government-provided education, it does create a two-tier system? And would the Minister agree that the funding should follow the child, regardless which school the child attends?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I do not agree. I do not agree with that. The funding of schools on ALPU get a percentage from government. The other funding that they receive from fees and other ways to raise money would also go towards funding the entire school, including SEN provision. We cannot have a situation where, because a child has special educational needs, the majority of the money raised for that school is not spent on that child. That is not the way to do that. If the funding model wants to change, that's fine. But we have to look very carefully at the number of factors that fund the school. And so I think the 22% figure in that way is just not accurate in terms of the way that the school funding model works. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
I would, has the Minister assessed the long-term financial impact on the states if the parents of SEN children will withdraw them from the fee-paying schools due to inadequate support and enough funding, and will increase demand and cost on the public schools?
Okay, a number of things on that. Thank you, and I thank the Deputy. First of all, there should not be inadequate support in schools that are fee-paying. They receive a full fee and support from government, so they have an income for their school. It is the decision of the head teacher and the management of that school and how they will spend that money. If they have children with SEN, then that would be part of the spending of that overall funding of the school and should be a significant part of it. I will remind the Deputy, I'm sure she knows, but I'll remind the Assembly, if a child has a record of need, which is a higher level of need and a very distinct need, all records of need are fully funded. Now, I think it's three, I can't remember the figure off the top of my head. Just forgive me 1 second, sir, I had a figure. There are 588 records of need across all of our schools. Only there are 8 of those in fee-paying schools. So the need in across our schools is significantly different. Each record of need will attract a minimum of around £10,000. That's a minimum of £10,000. So for those 8 children with a record of need in fee-paying schools, there is significant funding available as well. The spending of that funding is a decision for the school itself. If the school wants help on how that is spent, then we are open as a department to assist with that.
We have questions from Deputy Jern, then Deputy Stevenson, then a final supplementary from Deputy Dubé. Deputy Jern.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister's alluded a little bit to different areas in his last answers, but would the Minister set out specifically what his department is required to provide in terms of special need, educational needs support to states-funded fee-paying and independent fee-paying schools?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The ALPU is provided, and then fees are raised on top of that, most of which been increased above inflation, and within that, then the special educational needs need to be addressed within that school. Again, if exceptional action is taken for, I think it's 2 term and a half, then we can move on to the record of need process, which is fully funded in a separate funding model. So there is funding within the schools to meet the needs of all children in private schools. Not private schools, in states-assisted schools, states-funded schools, who take fees, fee-paying schools. Sorry, so I always get these confused. In fee-paying schools. So I believe what needs to happen is there needs to be a discussion with the school itself as to, if it is not perceived that they are meeting the special need of a child, why that is the case. But sir, if what we're going to say is we're going to have additional need funding in some schools, that are fee-paying schools and not others, then that just puts, where are we going to take that money from? Is that going to come from the schools where there is the vast majority of special educational needs? We already have issues in terms of that level of funding, and I would always want more funding for that, sir, as the need increases. I think the funding model of the ALPU is the funding model of the ALPU, and the schools are very aware of that funding model.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned there that there was need maybe for discussions with the schools to try to make sure that the funding that is received both from other means but also from the department and his department would make sure that it's spent on SEN, on special educational needs specifically. And so would the Minister agree that he will and his department will look into this and talk to the schools to ensure that there is the right level of support? Thank you.
Minister.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The school review framework takes account of how special educational needs is being addressed in schools, so that would be happening through the school review framework as a, if you like, a formal process. There is always an ongoing dialogue with schools as to what support they might need for their children with educational needs. And also, sir, I think we have to be careful because the range of need within the identification, and I'm careful with the wording there because it's not about labelling young people, it's about identification. You know, the identification of special educational needs, it's a huge range. And they can be from normally available provision with quality teaching, it may need one-to-one support, it may need group support, it may need a particular place for a child to be able to go to at break times. There's a myriad of need there. And that's what we will address. But in terms of the funding model, it is clear and it is a decision for the head teachers of the schools to say how they will meet the needs of those children. And they are in charge of the admissions themselves. So they are very aware of the needs of the children they have within those schools. Thank you, sir.
David Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe that SEN students are being treated the same in fee-paying and independent fee-paying schools as they are in state schools? And if not, is that acceptable in his view?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't think any child with educational needs would be treated the same. I think each case is individual. Each case for a child is about meeting their individual needs. I would suggest that the duty to meet the needs of a child with an identified need, whatever level that is the same for fee-paying schools and the same for our state schools. The funding models are different, but the funding models are different in other areas as well. Our state schools identify low prior attainment, Jersey Premium students, those with English as a second language, all of these things as well. So if we're going to change all of the schools onto the same funding model, that's fine, but we need to look at the implications of the intake of those schools who have smaller numbers of children, which I believe could be manageable and should be manageable within the funding mechanism that they have. The decision on how that money is spent is for the school to take on board. If there are individual cases where I believe those needs aren't being met, I would suggest that parents contact the head teacher of that school and make clear what they think is wrong in terms of what's being met for those children. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Appreciating that every case is individual, the question I was really trying to get at was about standards and that children and families are entitled to be able to expect a certain level of standard that they would, regardless of which school that they go to, and that is why it links to the law. Does the Minister believe that all schools are meeting that standard currently and families and the children with SEN can expect a certain level of standard of care when they are at school?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, let me be really clear. I believe that all schools should be providing that standard of care. Yes, should be. Whether they are or not, sir, when we have a look at the funding that we have across our schools and the demand that is there, it would be naive of me to say that every child's need is being met perfectly in every single school, because we are always striving to improve that. We are changing the model of support, the identification of need. There are changes in terms of what need actually means to different children. So I'm not going to say it's perfect. That would not be a good idea for me to say it's perfect, because then when I'm arguing for more money, so I would lose my own argument. However, I think the commitment from every single school and the wish for every single school to support that need is there. If there are specific examples of where a parent or somebody believes that a school is not doing that, please speak to the head teacher of that school, and there is a procedure for complaints if that is necessary. However, sir, I will say it was also very important for the parents to work with schools and work with children so that we can provide the need the best we can. I'll also say, sir, from my experience of dealing with children from all types of backgrounds, sometimes it takes time for things to kick in and for things to be successful. So we have to be, I wasn't being flippant, so when I said every child is different. I meant that you have to recognise that every child's need might be met at a slightly different time. So let's not throw everything away and make absolutes about things not working at all, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Given that the Minister has expressed that there is a need for increased funding for pupils with SEN across state schools and fee-paying private schools, will the Minister be bidding for more funds to address this in the future budget, and does he believe this will be supported by the Council of Ministers?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Well, so unfortunately in the past, following, for example, an ASIM review that asked for, I think it was £10 million and got about £4 million, there's not a great record of that. I think there are a number of things that we need to do with special educational needs. As we look at the future of our schools, the structure of our education system and the level of provision we can provide, I think we can better target where that need is. There is work we're undertaking, is the word I'm looking for, at the moment within the department to look at the way in which schools are supported in terms of their special needs in schools themselves. So one of the things I think we can do to improve is to get the help where it's needed, when it's needed, and simplify the processes that we have. So that's one of the things. In terms of budget requirements, it's going to be a very challenging year because there are so many things I would like to do. The CSP requirements, for example, are the things that we need to get forward before next year. So yes, it will be a challenge. And whether I would be successful in that, I can't tell, sir. As simple as that.
Thank you, Minister. Question 5, Deputy Iyer will put to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy Iyer.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state whether the recent number of injuries occurred by prisoners at HMP Lamoy has been identified as a concern to be addressed, and will she state what action, if any, she is taking to reduce the number of prisoner admissions to hospital? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. Injuries sustained by prisoners have not been identified as an area of concern at HMP Lamoy. The injury data previously provided in response to the Deputy's written question includes a broad range of incidents, from minor, such as scratches and abrasions, to more serious injuries. These injuries result from various activities, including sports, work-related tasks, and incidents of self-harm. Upon reviewing the data, no specific trends or areas requiring immediate attention have been identified.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Were any weapons used by prisoners on themselves or on staff members, and if so, how were they obtained? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So this specific information is not recorded in a way that is searchable, however, would be recorded as part of the report of any relevant incident. Without conducting an extensive search of all records, I can advise that there was one case where injuries were inflicted with a weapon that required hospital treatment. This involved a broken plate, and the assailant was prosecuted through the court system. Whilst there may be further relevant incidents, however, I would stress that they are very rare. Use or possession of weapons within the prison is not a cause for concern.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. According to the latest Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons inspection report presented in February this year, the rate of prisoner-on-prisoner assaults has increased and the rate of assault on staff continues to be of concern. Does the Minister believe, or is she aware of any intelligence on the matter that suggests one of the factors involved in this scenario is as a direct consequence of frustrations relating to delays in prisoner transfer to the UK?
Minister.
Sir, in relation to the report, the view of the reporting body was that the prison had a good level of care within the prison. I appreciate that there will always be incidents of assault both on prisoners, against prisoners and prison staff. However, in relation to the point that the Deputy makes about transfers to UK prisons, I fully accept what she says, that there are delays. However, those delays are because the UK are in a position where their own prisons are very full, and we are on a programme of being able to transfer a smaller amount of prisoners. We will, sir, we continue to work with the UK government in relation to this matter alongside the other Crown dependencies. But of course, sir, we can only transfer prisoners when we have the facility to do so.
Supplementary, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for her response. If delays in transfer continue to be a feature of conditions at Lamoy, can the Minister tell us what steps she will take to ensure that staff are equipped to manage the risks identified in the report, particularly with regard to overuse of the CSU and the increasing incidence of self-harm?
Minister.
So I think the prison has looked at all sorts of incidents in relation to dealing with prisoners. And what I would say is that we are putting policies and procedures in place in order that maybe sort of minor matters that may have been dealt with more in relation to penalising a prisoner, we are looking at more sort of working with them and providing prisoners with more, how can I put it, we are not rewarding as in financially rewarding, but we are sort of positively dealing with people for positive behaviour is what I'm trying to say. So what we're actually doing is working with what we have at the moment in order that we can make the experience more positive. And we do continue to work with the UK and we will continue to do so. And there's a lot of work going on in this space with all the Crown dependencies because we are all in the same position, unfortunately.
Deputy Iyer, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. In December of this year, a prisoner is going on trial at the Royal Court for attacking another inmate. Can the Minister advise, is this the only prosecution to take place this year, and are there any others in the pipeline? Thank you, sir.
So I'm aware of that particular prisoner. Off the top of my head, I'm not able to say whether there are some that are going to be coming up within this year, because obviously I am not aware of which prisoner that currently deals with, but I am aware of one that will be dealt with by the courts. That will continue to occur if people are dealt with for assaults and other matters within the prison. I will ask the prison governor if they're able to provide me with a list in order that I can provide that information in relation to what the deputy asks, sir.
Thank you, Minister.
So, point of order, just should the Minister be talking about alleged assaults if they've not come to court yet, rather than assaults? It might prejudice the case.
Well, I don't think she was identifying a particular case. I think probably a slip of the tongue, wasn't it? I'd have thought. Yes, question 6, Deputy Stevenson will put to the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state what actions are underway to improve the diagnosis, treatment and management of endometriosis, and whether he will be implementing any learnings or changes arising from his attendance at the Below the Belt film screening and discussion organised by Endometriosis Jersey on the 17th of June 2025?
Minister.
Sir, I wonder if the Deputy would be prepared to allow the Assistant Minister for Health, Deputy Howell, to answer that question as she heads up.
Yes, she's indicated she will. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. We would also like to thank the Endometriosis Jersey Group for arranging the screening of Below the Belt at the Arts Centre. I understand how debilitating endometriosis is for some women and girls, and I sympathise with the challenges that some go through. If anyone does have severe period pain, I encourage them please to visit their GPs, as they can often help. Currently, women can be referred to a gynecological clinic by their GP to receive further advice and treatment, including pain relief. There is now a plan to set up a dedicated endometriosis clinic in Jersey, offering a multidisciplinary approach to help women and girls most severely affected by endometriosis. The clinic will be linked to a specialist endometriosis centre in the UK. We're also setting up an endometriosis group working with individuals and GPs to improve education and help early diagnosis and to work out a more streamlined pathway. This is part of our action plan to improve access to gynecological services for women, coupled with education and knowledge about gynecological conditions and where and how to seek help. I want to reassure women and girls that we are listening and we don't want anyone to suffer in silence. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir, and I want to thank the Assistant Minister for her very considered response there as well, which does recognise the experience of many of those people with that condition. Could she give us an example of how a patient's journey and experience...
Just come back on, I haven't touched anything.
Conor St Clement, we can hear you again.
My microphone.
Yes.
My question was, how will a patient's journey and experience be different under the new clinic system, and is it going to require any additional funding to operate?
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. I believe the clinic will just be a more streamlined service so that the referral from your GP will be direct into the clinic, where we'll have experts in that area working. Thank you, sir. And what was the other thing you'd like to know?
Will it require extra funding to operate?
I don't believe it will require any extra funding, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Breniff. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. If no new services are being offered as part of this clinic and no additional funding, can the Minister explain how islanders will feel the benefit of this? What will actually be different to a woman who is suffering with endometriosis?
Thank you,
Minister.
Deputy. I believe that we are raising the awareness of endometriosis, and the patient will be able to go to their GP, and there will be a direct link to the endometriosis clinic. I think it's just, with all gynecological things, it's just very good to talk about them and for women and girls to understand that there is help available. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Is there capacity in the service? If the Minister is raising awareness, which I agree is good to do, is there capacity to deal with potentially increased numbers of women knowing that they can access these services?
Thank you, sir. We have just recruited 3 new gynecological consultants, sir. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the department also commit to collecting more data on the prevalence of the condition within Jersey and the experience of those suffering with it in order to better inform policy decisions in future, including on the economic impact of the disease?
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. We will do our very best. It will depend on whether we get the additional funding for digital, because that we need improved digital services to be able to collect all this data and to work with clinicians. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Assistant Minister. Question 7, Deputy Terrier, will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Terrier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister state what gaps, if any, have been identified in service provision for deaf islanders across government departments, including signing provision and hearing loops? If none, will he commit to engaging with affected islanders to ascertain how service provision might be improved?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. British Sign Language is operational across most government services using remote online third-party interpreter, so sign video. This includes at Union Street and across health services. Emergency services currently also offer an emergency-only text service. There are hearing loops in Union Street. The Diversity and Inclusion team maintain relationships with the Jersey Deaf Society, ESA Jersey, and regularly attends deaf partnership meetings and monthly informal deaf club meetings. The government also receives direct communications from islanders via a dedicated deaf community engagement officer who works from the government building at Union Street, as part of the Social Security Department. There are always opportunities to improve service provision for deaf islanders, and we are actively working on this in school through supporting engagement with British Sign Language using parents, increasing capacity to deliver enhanced British Sign Language courses and training in Jersey. And the hospital is working to improve the overall patient experience for deaf patients, and this includes focus on communication, enhancing both the clarity of written communications and the range of communication methods available, and enhancing waiting areas and hearing loop maintenance, sir. And yes, the government will commit to continue engaging with affected islanders to ascertain how we might further improve service provision.
Supplementary.
Thanks, sir. I thank the Minister for his answer. I recently engaged with one deaf person in our community who said that she would get phone calls from the hospital about her appointments, even though her notes clearly said that she was deaf and she couldn't answer the phone. And on another occasion, she was asked at the hospital, for example, where her appropriate adult was, and she simply replied that she was an intelligent adult and didn't need an appropriate adult, she was simply deaf. Does the Minister think that across Parliament more needs to be done to perhaps combat this perhaps thoughtless or careless prejudice that deaf people might face in our community?
Thank you. So whilst of course I can't comment on individual cases, yes, I think more can be done. So the hospital are working to improve the overall patient experience for deaf patients, sir. And as I said, we are committed to engaging with affected islanders, and I would urge members who are contacted by islanders or any affected islanders to get in contact with the government if they are having difficulties, sir, where we will be pleased to listen to the problems with a view to improving our services.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister explain why the main meeting room in the new Union Street building lacks hearing loop technology and commit to ensuring islanders who are hard of hearing can fully participate in public meetings like the Planning Committee hearings in an accessible space?
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. I think when the building was originally designed, it wasn't envisaged that public meetings would be held in that space, and I do agree that areas where there are public meetings need to contain the appropriate provision.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. It was actually because I accompanied an islander last week to Planning Committee in the main meeting room, and as hard of hearing, she was unable to follow the proceedings, even though she had a lot to say on the matter. How will the Minister, the Chief Minister, now accepting that this is difficult to have public meetings at New Union Street, what will happen next? Because there needs to be this accessibility for islanders to participate, especially in things like the Planning Committee.
Chief Minister.
I think I need to liaise with the relevant team, sir, at Union Street, and following brief ministerial discussion, so just simply give an instruction for that part to be put right, sir, and make sure the provision is provided, sir, and undertake to do that.
I have questions from Deputy Gardner, Deputy Doublé, and then the Connétable of St Martin, and then the final supplementary. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chief Minister advise if the public counters room routinely tested for the hearing loops, and if any new recruited staff mandatory received training by engaging with the deaf community?
Chief Minister.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the full question, but I don't have the detail to hand as to exactly which members of staff are trained to liaise with hearing impaired customers, so, but I can certainly find out.
In this case, supplementary, would the Chief Minister advise which department, chief officer or minister has responsibility in engagement with deaf community?
If I may, sir, I'll provide that information to the Deputy in writing following the sitting. Thank you.
So would it be possible to provide in the public domain, because I think that it's important for the deaf community to know who is ultimately responsible for engagement with them?
Chief Minister.
I can publish the answer, sir, yes.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister think that we are doing enough generally to make sure that islanders with disabilities are being included?
Chief Minister.
I think we are doing more than we have done. There's a momentum going, sir, but we can always do more. We recognise that, and we are committed to doing more, as I believe this Assembly is, sir. But we can't achieve it overnight, but I believe that where there is a will, sir, there is a way to get better, so we're committed to doing that.
Supplementary?
What more could we do? And for example, is there anything baked into policy formation which requires sensitivity to protected characteristics such as disability?
I'm just wondering, so are we related to hearing now, sir, or just could the deputy clarify?
I think the question was in relation to...
Also general.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, as I explained in the, I outlined what we are doing in the opening answer, sir. What we are working on improving, and of course a commitment to continue engaging with affected islanders to ascertain how we might further improve the service provision. So we are committed to doing that, sir. And I think the important thing is we keep the momentum going, and that's a message I want to put across to the Assembly.
Conor St Martin.
Thank you, sir. On Sunday, I attended the ESA, which is the Deaf Community Barbecue, and met with some fantastic people there, and spoke to or was interpreted to. And it appears that the community are quite poorly served, and they don't seem to have a dedicated social worker who actually uses BSL, which is incredibly important. I believe it was got rid of by a chief executive 2 chief executives ago. So can the Chief Minister commit to providing because it's incredibly important that they actually have a social worker who can use British Sign Language? They are a deaf community. Could he look into that, please?
Chief Minister.
Yes, certainly, sir. And as I said, we receive direct communications in liaise directly with the community, sir, the partially hearing impaired community, sir, through our deaf community engagement officer who works at Union Street. And I did meet with them briefly last week, but I undertake to follow that up, sir, and see what we can do to improve things in that area.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. It was, my supplementary was as well that because BSL is a distinct language and culture, maybe we could include them in the International Cultural Centre. Would he think about that? Thank you.
That's up to I think those people involved in the International Cultural Centre, sir, and I certainly wouldn't object to it.
Final supplementary, Deputy Tellier.
So would the Chief Minister commit to perhaps giving us more information or even conducting an audit about numbers of staff across departments who are BSL trained and when, under which circumstances BSL signing, interpreting, subtitling, etc. would be provided automatically for governmental announcements and videos, etc.?
I would say, but if I may just provide briefly some further statistics. According to the report by the Royal Association for Deaf Persons, there are approximately 13,000 adults who have some degree of hearing loss. There are between 6,000 and 7,000 active adult hearing aid users. There are 24 British Sign Language first language speakers. Somewhere between 10 and 20 have profound hearing loss and communicate with mixed a message. So there are 74 deaf children and young people who are supported by the Children and Young People's Education, the Skills Department, deaf support team, sir. So we are on top of the statistics, and I can only reiterate, sir, the government's commitment to continue engaging with affected islanders to ascertain how we might further improve service provision, sir. So the answer to that is yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 8, Deputy Wilson will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise what measures, if any, are being introduced in the coming months to reverse the continuing trend of more people leaving Jersey than moving to the island, particularly in relation to 20 to 29-year-olds?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. One of the greatest challenges facing our island today is ensuring that young people not only see a future for themselves in Jersey, but can afford to build that future here. The high cost of housing, both to buy and rent, is a serious concern. It directly affects the choices young islanders make about where they live, where they work, sir, and where they raise families. If we are to retain them, we must take meaningful, sustained action, and that is why this government is delivering real, practical measures and solutions to meet the challenge, sir. We are continuing to increase the supply of affordable family homes, releasing more land for development and redevelopment, and expanding schemes that help young islanders take their first step onto the property ladder. We're also working to create a fairer rental market, one that offers better quality, a greater affordability and stronger security for tenants, stronger security, and that's an important debate we're going to have during this sitting. But it isn't just about housing. We must invest in opportunities in jobs, health, in education, in leisure, and in our community. And that's why we are beginning construction of the new hospital soon and transforming our health service, focusing on prevention, patient care, and a modern digital infrastructure. We're investing in our schools, delivering a much-needed new youth facilities and extending nursery care to support young islanders. We have accelerated the long overdue plans to redevelop Fort Regent, turning it once again into a vibrant community leisure destination. And members will know, sir, that these are not issues that will resolve overnight, sir, but with the clear intent of the government, with some long-term vision and strong collaboration in this assembly, sir, we can, we will, and we absolutely must build an island where young people not only are able, but proud and pleased to stay. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister believe that those intentions will actually see a reversal in the trends that we've just outlined, and when does he expect to see that come forward?
So they are not intentions, sir. They are not intentions. They are actions that are happening now. Long overdue. Long overdue. And I would remind members, sir, that the circumstances around our population have changed significantly over the last 3 to 4 years, where we're looking at ways to dampen down the growth in our population to now a new set of circumstances, sir, where our biggest challenge is working age population, the falling birth rate. And that's what we are starting to address. We are at the early stages of that. I accept that. But it is a key priority. It's a key part of the Common Strategic Policy, and it's the focus of the forthcoming States Members workshop that we're due to have, because it is one of the biggest issues and challenges we face, sir.
I have questions from Deputy Doublé, Deputy Renouf and Deputy Dern, and then a final supplementary from Deputy Wilson. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. The cost of living it will be one of the biggest issues facing young islanders. Housing and groceries, I believe, being the main two costs. What is the government doing to address these?
Well, members will also know that we have limited levers to pull when it comes to managing cost of living. Part of the Common Strategic Policy and part of our policy was to keep government charges and fees and duties as low as possible in relation to that. Deputy Morel, the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, chairs the inflation strategy groups that are working on a further policy that might bear down on that. I'll make no bones about it. It is challenging and difficult, but we are committed to doing everything we can to just help with the pressure of that cost of living. But we are quite often at the mercy of geopolitical and situations. I think the biggest impact we can make, sir, is on housing, both to buy and to rent, sir, and that is probably at the forefront of our priorities at the moment.
Supplementary.
Another cost is childcare, and indeed if young people want to start families, then childcare needs to be funded. Will the Minister address the current gap that it exists in terms of paid parental leave and paid childcare, and what can be done to fill that gap?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, that does need further consideration. Of course, the falling birth rate is of great concern, and housing, affordable family housing, and the cost of living, of course, have been cited as partial reasons for that. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the actual question. The Deputy, could you just confirm?
So there currently exists a gap between funded parental leave and funded childcare. What will the Chief Minister do to address that gap?
I can't answer that right off the top of my head, sir, but I'll undertake to discuss that with the relevant ministers just to be updated on their current plans on that. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so the original question asks about the continuing trend of more people leaving Jersey than moving to the island, particularly in relation to 20 to 29-year-olds. What data does the government hold on this? And how, therefore, will he judge the success of his government's policies in addressing this problem?
Chief Minister.
We have significant data set provided by Statistics Jersey, which we review as an essential part of the information we need to develop a policy. So, and like I said, the focus of the forthcoming States Members Workshop will focus on this, where we'll be sharing some of that, the statistics that we utilise. But the Deputy is right in her question. The biggest area of concern is in the 20 to 29 age group, where we are seeing over 300 people a year leaving the island in that bracket now, and we must work urgently and diligently to try and reverse that.
Supplementary.
So the other part of my question related to how the Minister will know whether he's been successful. What targets, if any, is he setting? What will we judge? How will we be able to judge whether the measures he's introducing have successfully solved the problem?
Well, as we develop policy further, so we've put in place a set of key performance indicators that will monitor and manage success, and we'll work closely with Statistics Jersey to make sure we have regular updates so we can monitor how, if so, and hopefully how we are succeeding.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. One islander has confided in me that their 18-year-old has applied to 31 companies for a traineeship in the trades, and none have resulted in a role. And these companies have given feedback to this family, and they are citing that it's because of the new minimum wage introduction and the getting rid of the trainee wage. What conversations has the Chief Minister had with businesses on this, and how will he encourage companies to take on apprenticeships for that age group between 18 and 25?
Yeah, we have had a great deal of conversation in mostly in government. I know the Jersey Business, the Economic Development Business, and some of the arm's length organisations, which is responsible for liaise very closely with businesses, and that's why we have put financial support scheme in. I have to be honest, I was disappointed that we removed a training rate, but we had a very good and democratic discussion around the Council of Ministers table, and the Council of Ministers were strongly supportive of the position that we find ourselves in now, sir. What we do have, sir, is support for apprenticeships, but the difference is now businesses will actually have to provide evidence that they are providing an apprenticeship with proper training, rather than taking on a junior person and giving them, if you like, unaccredited training on the job, which can be valuable as well, sir. So that's the difference. So there is support, and the conversations will continue through the Economy Department and Jersey Business. But we're mindful of the challenges businesses are facing now in the move to the living wage over the next 2 years.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And what will the Chief Minister say to this 18-year-old who has very keen on starting their career in the trades and has been knocked back by at least 31 companies at this stage? And what is their message to those youngsters to help them find a job?
Well, sir, it's difficult to comment on a single case, sir, but it sounds extremely disappointing for the young person. But I would urge them to continue, sir. We have, albeit a challenged economy, our economy is still strong. We have good levels of employment. But this Assembly must also realise that it is challenging, especially for certain sectors of our economy. Now, with the updated employment legislation that we've rightly brought in over the years, it is a much greater commitment for smaller firms to engage staff because of the commitments they have to make. Many of my peer group, my friends who work in construction, who a number of years ago were employing 20, 30 people, are now working on their own again because of they find it difficult to meet those commitments. So my message is to all of the young people, please continue to push. I have strong confidence in the economy, and I have confidence, and then more than ever, we'll do everything we can to help them moving forward.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister accept that the loss of working age islanders in this age group undermines the island's economic strategy? and its stated ambitions for productivity and inclusion and growth, will he commit to involving young people in any radical rethink of youth policy going forward?
Chief Minister.
Absolutely, sir. I mean, the key to this is really pushing hard new policy through. The most important part of that process is engaging with young people, so we know exactly what it is they need that will encourage them, that will give them the confidence to stay here. So it's a strong yes to that. So we will engage young people with our policy making. And an example of that, sir, a small example of that is on the public consultation with Fort Regent, where out of the 6,000, approximately 1,000 were young people who were engaged with directly in their schools and provided invaluable responses to that consultation.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 9, Deputy Joan, will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Joan.
Will the Minister advise whether he is considering any reform or clarification of the Bridging Island Plan policy GD10, percentage for art, which requires developers to contribute approximately 1% of construction costs of larger developments to public art?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I can say to the Assembly I don't currently have any intention to reform GD10. As members will know, interim amendments to the Island Plan are not possible between Island Plan debates. As part of the next government's review, though, into the Island Plan, all policies, including GD10, will be evaluated based on performance and assessment of their effectiveness in achieving the intended policy outcomes. So until then, the Bridging Island Plan remains the primary reference for planning decisions, and GD10 will continue to guide the assessment of larger scale developments in Jersey. I just finished by saying, sir, that the plan, Bridging Island Plan, Proposal 11, does recognise the need to update the current supplementary planning guidance. And while this work isn't in the work programme, I do commit to looking at it to see what I might do in the short time I have left.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, thank you, and thank the Minister for his answer. Is the Minister then satisfied that developers and planning officers have adequate guidance to interpret the percentage for art requirement in innovative and site-specific ways?
Minister.
Sir, as we've already discussed, GD10 is a policy, and the preamble to the policy says, and I'll just quote a small part of it, public art needs to be located in a position where it can be experienced by or is visible to the public on land forming part of the application. Where this option can't be delivered, the applicant will be required to justify reasons and have the option to procure and implement the public art off-site within the vicinity of the development area on land which is accessible to the public and subject to the agreement with the relative landowner. So I do feel, sir, that currently there is enough guidance. But as I've said previously, I commit to looking at the SPG and see if there's something I can do.
There'll be questions from Deputy Tadier, Deputy Stevenson, Deputy Renouf, and then a final supplementary from Deputy Joe. Deputy Tadier.
Does the Minister agree that if there were a revision of policy GD10, one possible option could be to actually, rather than putting the onus on the developer to provide the public art and ultimately decide what and where it goes, that actually the 1% could be monetised and it could actually be reduced. So we could have, let's say, 0.5% for art, but which goes into a central pot, which is then administered by maybe an arts body that could consult about public art so that it could be used in locations other than just where the developments are going to be.
Minister.
I don't disagree that would be certainly something I would want to look at, sir. It must be obvious that large schemes won't necessarily be easy for the public to look at, and the art on the site might be difficult for the public to view. There is some flexibility in this policy which allows for what the Deputy suggests, and in some ways that makes it easier. In other ways it makes it more difficult because subjectivity is always exactly what it says on the tin. But I take the Deputy's views on board. I think it would be a good idea to review that.
Supplementary.
Thanks, sir. And thank the Minister for his answer. And would he then also maybe consult with the Public Sculpture Trust or whatever exists or remains of it, sir, to see if they have any ideas about how this policy could evolve?
Minister.
I'm not aware of the Public Sculpture Trust, sir, but I will endeavour to find out about them.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. What kind of message does the Minister believe the government is sending out when it comes to the percentage for art policy, when its own departments are seeking to have their developments exempted from it, like at Oakfield?
Minister.
As I just said, sir, there is some flexibility in this policy, and I accept the point that the Deputy raises. I know that this particular issue was raised. And if my recollection serves me correctly, I think the answer was that it was important to put as much money as possible into this public facility. This particular facility is specifically for sport. And it may well be that other applications for things like affordable housing, for example, and large schemes which might attract a percentage for art contribution would again be let off that, if that's the right phrase, in as much as it's important to make houses as affordable as they possibly can be. I can't offer the Deputy much more than that, sir. I know it was discussed, and I think the answer was they wanted to spend as much money as they could on the sporting facilities and not spend money on art.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, thank you, which it does lead me nicely on to my follow-up question. Would the Minister be open in due course to perhaps looking at a way to repackage the policy, perhaps as, say, a contribution to sport or play provisions in the local area of a development? It seems to me certainly that while it may have been effective in its own way over the years, we've had a number of decades of this policy, and perhaps it's a way to look at it in a different way now.
Minister.
Well, the answer is not dissimilar to the one I've just given to Deputy Taddeo. I think when we look at this policy, there's lots of things that we could consider, and that may well be one. I know in the past, sir, I've tried to bring community levies to this Assembly and failed miserably. And that, in a way, was another way of getting any developer to contribute a percentage of the scheme to community infrastructure, very much like the Deputies just mentioned, playgrounds and things like that. So, yes, I think it's clear that there's scope to look at this policy and this guidance again, and very shortly, I would imagine the next government will be doing that before they debate the next island plan.
Deputy Breniff.
So thank you. A question more about process. Is the Minister aware that it is apparently the case that a large number of percent for art proposals in planning applications go through one person? And is he concerned that this quasi-monopoly might be reducing creativity in interpreting the percent for art requirement?
Minister.
I can't say that I'm specifically aware that very many of these applications run through one person, but I think I may know where the Deputy's going. I think it's important that we consider all types of art. If it's a percentage for art, there could be very many avenues that we could be going down to provide that. So I will commit to thinking about what the Deputy suggested and make sure that we are giving a reasonable selection of people the opportunity to tender for percentage for artwork.
Supplementary?
Yes, so just to extend that a little further, will the Minister commit to clarifying with his own officers the potential for multiple people to be involved in putting in those applications for percent for art schemes? They don't just have to use the one that have been used in the past, the person that's been used in the past.
Yes, sir, I'm happy to do that. It may well be that if it's a very large scheme which attracts a considerable amount of money for the 1%, it may be possible to split that into a number of different subsections around if it's a large site. And there are very many different ways that we could look at this. I think the message I'm getting from members today is this guidance and specifically this policy is something which needs to be looked at, and we need to consider many options.
Deputy Chair, and final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Minister for his answers and for his last one about the importance of looking at this, and kind of follow up really in asking, before I asked about do you think that developers and planning officers have adequate guidance, and the Minister quoted from the policy which specifically says something that one would feel is something about a piece of sculpture or a permanent sculpture, something that has to be on site. But yet in the preamble to that policy within the Bridging Island Plan, it actually says public art encompasses a vast spectrum of art practices and forms, from permanent sculptures to temporary artworks, monuments, memorials, land art specific work, street furniture, integrated architectural designs, socially engaged practices and community-based projects. And so I'd like to ask the Minister if he could go back and look at this guidance as soon as possible to understand that developers and his planning department sees this percentage of art not just as a standing one-piece sculpture fed through by one particular consultant, that this encompasses a wide range of art practices and forms, including socially engaged practices and local Jersey artists at the heart. Thank you.
Minister.
There was lots in that question, sir, but I am very happy to commit to the Deputy to go away and have a good look at it, and I would be very happy to consult with her further as to how we might change if we do change. But I would finish by saying that there's no doubt in my mind that the Percentage for Art scheme has, in certain places, delivered some fantastic pieces of art, which are permanent, which are very visible to the public. And most recently, one of the largest ones we've seen is a new piece of art down on the waterfront, near the Horizon building, which is a very, very spectacular piece of art, and I encourage anybody who's not seen it to go and look at it. There are other pieces around St Helier, and I always find it amusing to look at the dancer hanging from a wire on the building near the Esplanade, and more recently a small sculpture on some buildings next door to the Old Girls College site, which one will see very clearly if you drive past. So there's no doubt in my mind that Percentage Art has a lot to contribute, but I take the Deputy's view and question on board, and that of other members, and say that we will go away and have a look at this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 10, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Renouf.
Following the announcement that OECD Pillar 2 taxes will not apply to United States companies, will the Minister advise the Assembly what steps, if any, the government is taking in response, and what the implications are for the government's Pillar 2 revenue forecast?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm aware of the recent G7 announcement on a proposed carve-out for US groups from Pillar 2. Negotiations on the way that Pillar 2 will sit side by side with the US tax regime is now underway at the OECD, and Jersey is involved in that process. Our income forecast is correctly based on the legislation that is currently in place. It is a deliberately prudent base case forecast, and it is right that the base case is reflected in the budget. In common with all 147 jurisdictions in the OECD inclusive framework, Jersey continues to monitor global developments and ongoing OECD discussions. It is, of course, too early to assess any definitive future impact on Jersey. Our approach remains focused on maintaining a competitive, proportionate and internationally aligned tax framework.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for his answer. At scrutiny last week, the Minister referred to less fulsome tax revenues than planned. What is his current take on how much less fulsome those revenues will be, given that he might have to put some figures into the budget?
So, of course, the Deputy wouldn't expect me to give a number when the budget has not been yet considered fully at the Council of Ministers table, but I did make that observation. He is correct, and I think I further explained that that observation was a result of existing corporate income tax receipts, and that it would flow through into that forecast, because of course what we do with Pillar 2 is take those in-scope companies out of the existing corporate income tax regime and put them into the new Pillar 2 regime, and so that less fulsome forecast was arising out of that, not arising out of Pillar 2 per se.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned that Jersey has an involvement with the development. Would the Minister give a bit more details what type of involvement and who has involvement with the to adjust our position to the American changed position.
Minister.
So we've been very fortunate that over the years of the development of this particular regime, that Jersey has had a seat at the steering group. The Deputy Director in Revenue Jersey attends that steering group. There's a working party, there's a steering group, and then of course there's the full members of the OECD inclusive framework in the round. That steering group tries to thrash out some of the details and was involved in forming the overall proposal. As I said, the understanding between the US and the G7 was a very high-level understanding, and all of the detail has still got to be worked through.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Does the Minister think there is any risk that we can be losing completely our Pillar 2 revenues?
Minister.
Well, we of course, without knowing what the detailed arrangements and changes may be, it's not possible at this stage to say one way or the other. The only thing we can say is that we currently, in line with many members of the OECD inclusive framework, have got legislation in place right now, and companies within Jersey, as they are within those jurisdictions, have liabilities arising.
Questions from Deputy Jern and Deputy Wilson, then final supplementary from Deputy Renouf. Deputy Jern.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise if there's any impact on these recent changes will have on funding the delivery of the Sustainable Finance Action Plan and supporting transition to a net zero economy as outlined after my amendment was accepted in the budget 2025?
Minister.
So this will deal with the receipt side of the equation, not the spend side of the equation.
Yes. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise what analysis has been undertaken to assess the potential on the island's international competitiveness and long-term economic strategy?
Minister.
So as the Deputy may or may not be aware, one of the streams of the long-term competitiveness strategy is bringing forward a tax strategy, all of which is intertwined with where the requested changes to Pillar 2 from the US might land.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister give an indication as to whether he anticipates any risk of multinational firms relocating or restructuring as a consequence or in response to the announcement that's just been made by the US?
Minister.
So the understanding was, as I said, a broad, high-level understanding. One can only assume that the G7 thought it necessary to reach an understanding with the US in order to have an article from the Big Beautiful Bill, the 899, removed. That's now been removed, so the G7 has been successful in that policy aim. We now have to deal with the after effect of that understanding, which is extremely detailed and complex. I can, however, affirm to the Deputy, as I said in my closing initial answer, that we remain focused on maintaining a competitive, proportionate and internationally aligned tax framework so that the scenario that she outlines as a possibility doesn't happen.
Deputy Renouf, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his answers. The budget includes plans to use Pillar 2 revenues to help pay for the hospital. £277 million was set aside for this. The budget included a fallback plan to borrow from the strategic reserve if Pillar 2 revenues fall short. Does he think this prospect has increased in the light of recent events?
Minister.
So as I can't really say it frequently enough. There is a lot of detail still to be considered. It's only in knowing what those detailed agreements might be that I'm fully able to answer that question. As the Chief Minister has said, and I think as all ministers have said, they remain completely committed to funding the hospital, whatever the result of those OECD and US negotiations might be.
Thank you, Minister. Question 11, Deputy Jean will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state whether the use of the flat rate price per lane metre pricing model by DFDS has been assessed to result in fair, cost-effective outcomes without unjustified price increases for islanders and local businesses?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, being just over 3 months into a 20-year contract, it is far too early to assess any of the outcomes of this 20-year operating agreement with DFDS. But there's no question, sir, that the new flat rate card is intended to create a level playing field and provide transparency to promote competition. For the first time, we've also included a robust mechanism to govern future price increases. This will create price stability that islanders haven't had and will ensure that we do not see a return to 19% freight rate increases that were created by the previous incumbents.
Supplementary.
And thank you, sir, and thank the Minister for his answer. And so, with his answer, I assume the Minister still stands by his the Chief Economist's view that the lane metre pricing model would have minimal impact on prices, and as stated in the media, likely less than 0.5%. And has any new evidence led to a reassessment so far?
Minister.
Sir, I absolutely have faith in the Chief Economic Advisor's assessment. And it's important, his assessment was that any increase in price would lead to a 0.4% increase in a classic shopping basket. That is less than in RPI, because RPI includes services which are not involved in shopping. I did have, interestingly, a conversation with a freight provider in Jersey recently, and they actually said that their own calculations they believed showed that any increase in that shopping basket would be more like 0.3 rather than 0.4%. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister able to or aware of any logistics operators who have not increased their prices under the new agreement? So have all logistics operators to acknowledge increased prices to consumers, or have some actually kept the prices the same?
I have to say, sir, in response to that, I don't know is the answer. One of the issues previously was we didn't have sight of many of the prices, and there is no requirement for any freight provider to report their pricing to me or any other minister or states member. So I'm afraid I just don't know, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Renouf.
I wonder if the Minister accepts that a consequence of the flat rate is that those who rely on the dominant freight operator and are no longer able to take advantage of discounts means that it is a case of taking a small amount of pain now in order to have competition in the future.
Minister. Sir, there's no question in my mind this change is a change that creates a transition. And so, as with any change, there may be gainers and there may be those who gain less or even lose from that, sir. But it's not possible. We had no sight of discounted rates that the Deputy refers to, sir. And that, again, was one of the issues. There was no clarity as to what was being charged to whom and by whom, sir.
Supplementary.
Does the Minister worry that the short-term cost adjustment, or whatever we want to call it, may be putting quite a high cost in some areas of the economy? For example, we had the recent closure of a food operator that cited increased freight costs.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I note the Deputy mentions recent closure of food operator. I think there are also other reasons that are not cited for such closures. And it is always difficult because when any business closes, it is easier from their perspective to point to certain factors beyond their control. I, in my view, don't ever hear the full stories around these matters, sir. I am always and genuinely, constantly feel a great sense of responsibility and concern for the island's economy. I believe we have made the right decision for the long-term stability of freight to this island. I stood and asked previous Chief Minister to change the title from Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture to Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, precisely because I believe that when you're talking about economics and economic development, you should be looking at the long term, sir, as much as you have to at times look at the short term. And I stand by that, and I do believe strongly that this is an excellent change, which will bring not just competition to the market, but also bring price stability to the market. It's also important, sir, for members to understand that the JCRA in its own report on freight pointed to the fact that freight costs are only 7% of the cost of goods on our shelves. And so any increases need to be borne in mind, that any effect should only be borne in that 7%, sir. And so this is a minimal element of any cost of the goods on our shelves. Thank you, sir.
Questions from Deputy War and Deputy Tadier, and then the final supplementary from Deputy Jern. Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. And just in connection with data, I just want to say to the Minister, it'd be helpful if his department just picked up the phone to us. I can share some immediate information with you, and that is that freight costs have gone up by 11.5% in the last 12 months. I can just tell you that across the room now and easily do that. So I don't understand where there's this issue of a lack of transparency of collecting information on that front.
Sir, I don't understand what the Deputy is referring to at all, sir. It isn't possible for my officers to phone round every business in Jersey to find out their thoughts, sir. That's inconceivable as a concept. I think it's also important, sir, that to understand that the Deputy referred to an 11% increase over 12 months. Well, sir, this has been in for 3 months. And, sir, it's really important. All the tenders received increased freight prices. So there would have been freight price increases regardless, sir. And we now know, so if the Deputy has seen an 11% increase at his business, then it would be interesting to know exactly how that has been broken down. He himself should ask his freight provider, how has that come about? What are the costs that the freight provider is taking into account when suggesting that 11% increase? Because as I point to, the cost of freight is only 7% of the cost of goods on our shelves. And so, sir, I think the Deputy should be assured that as a businessman, he will now have understandable sight and understanding of freight prices that his freight providers are being charged by the ferry company, and he will understand in the future how much those freight prices are going to go up. So he will be able to challenge his freight companies when he believes there are excessive freight price increases. That is something that the Deputy is unable to do today. But next year, he will absolutely be able to challenge his freight companies because he will have transparency as a businessman as to exactly what that freight company is being charged by the ferry firm. So.
Supplementary? Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. What the Deputy won't be able to do is negotiate a price with the ferry themselves because of the flat rate card, so much for free market. Does the Minister agree that when he says he has no sight, they had no sight of the reduced costs that had been negotiated between the old company, the old ferry provider, and Ferry Speed, presumably? Why should he have had sight of that? Why does he think that he should have had sight and knowledge of a contract between two private businesses?
Minister.
Sir, I think the Deputy's initial comment showed a lack of understanding of the way these things work, sir, which I find fascinating. But, sir, I would say last year or in recent years, we have seen the ferry firm or the previous ferry firm increased their freight prices by 19%. But we learned that through the freight forwarders, not directly from the ferry company, sir. As government, we have had no ability to see exactly what freight prices are being charged by the ferry firm. And when freight prices go up, all the freight forwarders point to the ferry firm. But we had no way of confirming whether the freight forwarders were being fair or were being unfair. We couldn't know. And so now, sir, that we have that transparency, we will know exactly where the pricing is going up. And to that first comment that the Deputy made, there is a huge amount of negotiation that's possible between a recipient, a customer company, and the freight forwarders. because the cost of the ferry service is only one element of the cost of the freight forwarding. There is all the other elements of freight forwarding that that ultimately end up in the price being charged to the end customer in Jersey. So there's still vast room for negotiation. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
So, does the Minister believe that he needs to work on his messaging? Because when he tells businesses, including one businessman in this Assembly, that his figures are wrong and that actually it's 7%, does he accept that businesses are the ones who know best? And that the message that the Minister seems to be putting out is that when the economy is going well and when things are going well in the economy, he will take credit for them, but when certain things don't go well, when firms go bust, it's nothing to do with him.
Sir, I reject entirely the Deputy's assertions, which are quite childish in my view. I didn't say that the Deputy who spoke previously was incorrect in his data. That's not something that passed my lips. What I said, sir, and I didn't contest the 11% rise that he claimed he had had. I believe that. I have no reason to disbelieve that. What I said, sir, was that the JCRA study into freight showed that the cost of freight in the price of the good on the shelf in the shop comes to only 7% of the price of the good on the shelf. That is entirely different to the 11% increase that the previous Deputy was speaking about.
Deputy Joan, a final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And we've heard from the Minister that he believes it's too early to make a full assessment of or consequences of this model, and he has not heard or listened to stakeholders about if there has been any impact or not. So does the Minister have plans to undertake assessments or further discussions with stakeholders about its impact in the coming months?
Sir, I constantly listen to businesses, I constantly speak to businesses, and I constantly listen to representative organisations and speak with representative organisations. I will continue to do that, sir. The previous Deputy, when speaking, said that I like to take credit when things are going well, but not when they're going badly. I could not be farther from the truth. I have sat down with hoteliers who have sat there speaking to a question that we will have later today and said, tell me about your problems. I absolutely take responsibility for decisions that I make, and I absolutely feel strongly and care deeply about the impact of on any decisions made here or elsewhere in the world about their impacts on our economy, sir. I do not just take credit. I am always held to account, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 12, Deputy Doublé will put to the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether proposals will be brought forward in the forthcoming budget to improve access to contraception services?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. The provision of contraception and also the communication of such provision is an active point of discussion in the Women's Health Advisory Group, of which I am a member. I can give the Deputy confidence that we can make improvements to our provisions without the need for a commitment specifically in this year's budget, because we can make such commitment through the Health Insurance Fund. With regard to prescribing, we are already creating foundations for such a service, and I recently made a ministerial order which will enable pharmacists to prescribe at cost to the HIF, and we're seeking to link pharmacy appropriately into patient records so that prescribers can issue prescriptions safely. I hope that the Deputy understands that there are a number of moving parts that need to be aligned in order to make such changes and make further improvements to the provision. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise the timeline for delivering these improvements, please?
Minister.
As I said in my initial answer, I have just recently signed a ministerial order. Currently, there is a lot of work to be done with pharmacies, because pharmacies do not currently have access to patient information at the moment, so should not be commissioned to issue prescription-only medications. So there is a piece of work being ongoing at the moment, which is a priority for the Employment, Social Security and Housing Department and Digital Services to achieve appropriate access to patient records. So I'm unable to give a timeline at the moment because that piece of work is integral to that.
Thank you, Minister. Question 13, Deputy Wilson will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Further to the top-up funding that was provided to Visit Jersey in 2024, will the Minister provide his assessment of why there have been lower than anticipated visitor numbers so far this year? And will he state what measures, if any, he is considering to address this and its impact on the local hospitality and retail industries?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, it is, as I just mentioned in previous answers, it is of concern to me that we have not seen growth in the tourism sector this year, but some of the reasons I think are understandable and will be because of change and the late tender process for the ferry services, but others are less understandable and beyond the control of anyone in Jersey, sir. So it's important to put such figures into context. So between January and April, the island saw a 7% reduction in figures compared to 2024. We know that over 2/3 of our visitors come from the UK, and low levels of UK consumer confidence is affecting lots of jurisdictions dependent on this market. So, sir, take one example, Ireland. Ireland has reported a 14% decline in visitors from the UK between January and April this year. Another significant decline has been seen in Iceland, which also has large amounts of UK visitors. So, sir, these things are beyond the control of this island. But that does not mean that we don't try to work to ensure that the tourism industry can enjoy today and enjoy a prosperous future. With that, we're investing heavily in the hospitality sector. We've included £6.6 million in productivity support between 25 and 26, of which £2 million is ring-fenced for the visitor economy alone. I've also provided an extra £2 million to Visit Jersey this year, and will provide another £2 million next year on top of their core grant funding. This has led to a 12% increase in web traffic and visibility of the island, and a 23% increase in onward referrals to local hotels. But it is not just about marketing, sir. We're also investing £2 million in new air routes over the next 2 years. That is to be aimed both principally at Europe, but also includes the UK. And as such, we're seeing an expansion of Jet2's connections in 26, which will drive a 50% increase in available seats. But, sir, having seats available is one thing. We also need to make sure that those seats are filled. And that's where the conversation with the industry comes in. And I have sat down on 3 occasions now with hoteliers in the industry and just sat in front of them and said, tell me the problems, let's talk about solutions. And I will continue to do this, sir. But it is a dialogue, because whilst the government can invest in marketing the island, we also need to make sure that the product is appropriate at this end. And at the moment, there is no question we have a high-priced industry, and the product is not always necessarily of the value that those prices determine. But I am sitting and with hoteliers and with hospitality providers to help them through that. And that's where things such as the visitor economy product, part of the Better Business Support Scheme and the productivity elements are aimed to help them make the investments in their products that will help us attract people to actually make the bookings. Because the marketing is being seen, but we need people to actually book onto those planes, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Minister for his comprehensive response there. As he's alluded to, there are sort of structural vulnerabilities in the visitor economy. Does the Minister believe that the current strategy for improving tourism in the island is perhaps maybe the wrong strategy, given the disappointing outturn? And even though he's talked to the industry, what sort of things does he think could change to actually improve the situation?
So I don't think we have the wrong strategy. I think politics and anything to do with politics has always got the issue of a short-term change and a short-term issue versus the longer-term outcome. And it's the longer-term outcome which is the strategic outcome that we're seeking. And that's absolutely where we need to go, which is greater visitor numbers. And at the end of the day, we're a high-priced island, so we need to be able to attract people who can afford those prices. I sat down just yesterday, sir, with a business person who is investing not just in the hotel in the island, but is investing in an attraction in the island as well. We talked about the possibility of attracting American tourists to Jersey from France. We talked about the fact that they are already seeing more people coming in from countries in Central and Northern Europe. And we talked about the fact that this person is happy to invest in the industry in Jersey because they do see opportunity, and they do understand that the strategy that we are working with the industry is one that shows them a future for Jersey. But we do need, as I said, to work with the industry that is already here to ensure that product and prices are where they need to be. And also to help them understand marketing. So there's a greater need for packaging. So packaging hotel rooms with attraction discounts, or packaging hotel rooms with discounts in the hotel, free meals, things like this. These are things that many hoteliers are not used to doing, but that is how we've cut through. It was interesting that February has actually seen the greatest increase. We had an increase in visitors in February. That's
Minister, your answer has reached 90 seconds and your previous answer was longer than that.
So we can, and that was done by packaging.
Deputy Breniff.
Thank you, sir. The Minister's original answer spoke about the decline in visitor numbers as being part of a wider trend in decline of UK visitors. Will the Minister provide an assessment of whether he thinks that is entirely the reason for the fall in numbers, or are there some homegrown reasons for the decline?
So if the Deputy had been listening to my answer fully to Deputy Wilson's first question, I said that there were also homegrown reasons. I said the lateness of the decision on the ferry tender absolutely has had an impact on sailings, because it meant that people weren't able to put, tour groups weren't able to book on ferries that hadn't been decided upon, so there was an impact there. And to Deputy Tudier's previous assertion that I don't hold my hands up when something isn't quite working, I do. And I say that was because of the lateness of the ferry tender process. And so there has been an impact on southern route sailings in particular. But that's something we're working with both DFDS and Visit Jersey to overcome. And they are directly marketing into France as we speak, and other places in Europe as we speak, sir, and investing their own money in that, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, I apologise for not being clearer with my question. I wonder whether the Minister would state to what extent he feels that the product, the homegrown product, if you like, is a factor in that decline, as opposed to the other factors he's mentioned.
So I believe hoteliers in Jersey work incredibly hard, and they work hard to deliver the best product that they can. But so I think when you look at the product and the price, I think that's what's really important. Jersey is now a higher price jurisdiction because of elements such as the cost of wages, and particularly the cost of wages, but other matters as well, the cost of goods to buy into your hotel to sell on. We have to accept that we are a higher price jurisdiction, and therefore we need to attract visitors who can pay those higher prices. And I do believe that there is, in some areas, a difference between the standard of product being offered in this island and the standard being expected. It's called value at the end of the day, and I don't believe that we always hit that value point. But that's where the Better Business Support Scheme and the Tourism Development Fund, the visitor economy part of that Better Business Support Scheme, are designed entirely to help businesses, and in terms of the visitor economy part, hoteliers and restaurateurs and retailers, to invest in their product. And government is helping them and stimulating that. And I think we will see in the coming hours, I think we'll see some really interesting statistics coming out about the stimulation of investment in Jersey as a result of the Better Business Support Scheme.
Deputy Wilson, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And it's pleasing to hear that there seems to be quite a lot going on to actually stimulate the tourism sector. But one of the things that it would be helpful if the Minister could give some further detail about what ideas or what progress he's making with a view to attracting the high value visitors he talks about, and is he focused on just volume, or is he also encouraging the sort of longer stay and the duration of visits to sustain the industry going forward?
So adapting to new markets is a really important part, or adapting to changing markets. So we see, sir, that we have, I think it's 4.3 days is the average stay of visitors nowadays. That's a global trend. That's changing. That's not something that Jersey can change on its own. What we need to do is adapt to that changing trend. We are pushing into not just the shoulder months, but the winter months. Jersey's tourism industry is hamstrung, sir, by the fact that we have a kind of 4-month season. We need to break out of that. And to that extent, we are, through the art strategy and also the sports event strategy, we are bringing events that we hope and we will encourage people to visit here during the non-seasonal months. On top of that, sir, we are seeing investment in hotels. I'm really pleased that we are seeing at least 3 or 4. I signed, I believe, a business license for one hotel recently. I know that there's been publicity about another hotel development, prospective hotel development. I was speaking to one business person yesterday about their, not prospective, it is a hotel development that's going on. So there is absolute desire to invest in Jersey's tourism industry. That's where the Assembly should be seeking and saying, we know we've got something to offer, but we need to market things. I have been asked properly, I have been asking Visit Jersey to have a more tactical approach to marketing, as well as the bigger strategic Visit Jersey approach, but also market the marathon, market the super triathlon, market Jersey's heritage, market our foodie offering. These are things which go really well to attracting those higher value tourists that we're looking for.
Thank you, Minister. Question 14, Deputy Catherine Curtis will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Further to a statement made by the principal of Highlands College that the college is not able to meet the demand of 14 to 16-year-olds from local schools and that a new campus is essential, will the Minister outline any plans for a new campus for further and higher education?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. So there are no current approved plans. While there are no current approved plans for a new campus at Highland College, I fully recognise the importance of the college's role in Jersey's economy and growing pressure on its estate. The need for a long-term strategic solution is thoroughly acknowledged by myself.
Supplementary.
Sir, does the Minister have plans to ensure full disabled access to the current building?
Minister.
So there are a number of essential works. I have a page of A4 that I think the panel has, the scrutiny panel has, because it was the first 2 pages of the letter sent to the scrutiny panel, which were a really positive interaction with Jersey Property Holdings and the college over the work that's going on over the next coming years for essential maintenance, part of which would include disability access, I'm sure. I don't have the details on that specific, but there's an enormous amount going on to do repairs at the college so that we can look ahead to over a number of pieces of maintenance and development that are going on in the college in the coming year or so.
Questions from Deputy Renouf, Deputy Gardner, and then the final supplementary from Deputy Catherine Curtis. Deputy Renouf.
So the Minister fully acknowledged the demand for a new campus, but didn't say anything about what would actually transpire in response to that demand. Can he state whether a new campus separate from Highlands College is under consideration, or whether renovation and rebuilding of Highlands is the preferred solution?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I do thank the Deputy for his question. I think we do need to look wider than where the college is at the moment, and whether or not a new site with purpose-built facilities may be a solution to the long-term needs of the college and our training needs. So I would be open to that, absolutely open to that. I think perhaps we need to look wider and say, it doesn't necessarily need to be on the campus where it is. It may, if there is a site that is clear and available, then work can start while the college continues, which would make that easier in the long term as well. So I would certainly be open to that.
Supplementary.
The government has a long-term infrastructure plan at the moment, which has achieved much discussion. Is Highlands renovation or rebuild on a new site or otherwise part of that infrastructure renewal programme?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy again. In terms of its maintenance and continuation, that's the first 2 pages of the letter that wasn't quoted in the press, giving absolute detail on some of the work that's going on there. In terms of the long-term capital expenditure, Highlands College is not on that specific expenditure. However, if there is any way in which we can find a site, find the right place and get that moving, I think we need to have flexibility in that. An example is the repurposing of Dotre House for a brand new La Passerelle school, which was desperately needed. So that was reprioritised, and that's going to happen and be ready in October. I think we need to be
less tied down by those specifics and what can we get on with and what opportunities arise, because we don't want to miss an opportunity when they arise for a new campus if we can possibly produce one.
Deputy Gard.
Would the Minister advise if there is a working group or any other way that feasibility studies looking into the options of the new campus? If there's any working group working on plans, on options for the new campus?
Thank you, sir. There are wide-ranging projects going on across the government, looking at all sorts of facilities, including Fort Regent, what opportunities that may arise, what opportunities there may be in other sites. What I would say to the Deputy is that if there is any opportunity for me to get a facility, a site, to build a new college, I would certainly push for that. Whether it's at the college itself site or on another site that becomes available and is suitable and would be successful in the long term. That's about as much as I can say on that at the moment, sir. Thank you.
Parliamentary.
So would the Minister agree that to meet 14-16 education needs to have a clarity how the education would be delivered, so the officers can find the opportunities to the way the education would be delivered? Would the Minister advise, does he have a working group within his department that looking what will be needed and how education will be delivered, that we after can put buildings to the policy direction?
Minister.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, this is slightly off the question, but I'd be pleased to answer it. That is exactly what's happening since day one of my tenure. We've been looking at how education will be delivered, what needs to change. Some examples of what's happening is the secondment of 2 head teachers into the department to see how schools and the department can work better to support each other, understand the needs of children in schools, including 14-16 education. I'm about to finish the very final school where I go and consult with young people about post-16 education. I'm at Montalabe next week, and we've spoken to quite a few children across our schools in terms of what the provision for post-16 education is, and I think that should be the priority in terms of our structure ongoing. We're also looking at the provision of early years and nursery care. We're looking at how that feeds into primary schools and improving the ability of children to access primary schools early on, and then how that progresses long-term into qualifications. There is an enormous amount of work going on, both with the Curriculum Council and across the department in terms of the delivery of 14-16 education and beyond. So let me reassure the Deputy that's happening.
Final supplementary, Deputy Catherine Curtis. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The panel received details of repairs to the current building, but I don't recall any about work enabling disabled access. So how will the Minister be ensuring full disabled access to the building, and when?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The works that are going on go through Jersey Property Holding and the college. I would have thought that as those works go on, including the ability to get into the college is part of that. If there are specific problems, then we can address those one at a time. But I can't give a specific time and what those individual problems are across the campus. So that's really for Jersey Property Holdings. It is a very specific question for this time, and we can look into it. I'm sure we can give a response, and I see the Infrastructure Minister nodding at me, so we can certainly provide that, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 15, Deputy Talia will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Talia.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state what officer advice he received and from whom regarding the grant of £1,580,000 and £750 as well of Jersey Battle of Flowers?
You said 1,000.
Did I get that wrong, sir?
It's 158,750. Anyway, Minister.
So I haven't quite finished.
All right. Sorry, I thought you had.
So can we round it up to 160,000, just under?
Yes.
£160,000 for the Battle of Flowers Parades Limited, prior to issuing a letter of instruction on this matter.
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. Sir, my officers have been working very closely with the Jersey Battle of Flowers Parades Limited, who are organising this year's Battle of Flowers and have been supporting that team as they navigate the events process. In this instance, given a substantial grant to a brand new entity, I've decided upon the advice of my officers to provide a formal letter of instruction to avoid any uncertainty around that grant. As with all grants, this is not a blank cheque, and key performance indicators have been set out, and we do want them to see them delivered, and they will be assessed against them, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the letter of instruction, which is normally issued when officer advice has been refused and the minister's decision is contrary to officer advice, says that the minister carefully considered pros and cons of issuing the grant funding. Could the minister say what the cons were that he took into consideration before issuing this grant?
So I don't think it's entirely correct to say that normally issued because it's contrary, the minister's view is contrary to that of the officers. They're issued when there is any concern or ambiguity with regard to the public finances manual as well. And so, sir, the advice on this case was very much because the entity is a brand new entity. And so we wanted to make sure that from an officer perspective, that they were able to feel comfortable under the public finances manual that we would be providing a grant to a brand new entity, sir. I forget the rest of the question, to be honest, I apologise, sir.
Yeah, the question was essentially what were the cons, what are the risks about granting this?
So those risks are principally around it being a brand new entity, although the members of this entity are members of the Battle of Flowers Association. So it was that element around the brand new entity that was the key risk here, sir.
The questions from Deputy Doublé and Brenner, and then final supplementary from Deputy Tadier. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise how this amount of funding compares to funding given to similar events in the island? One, for example, Channel Islands Pride. Could the Minister include the amount that was granted to Channel Islands Pride in his response, please?
So am I unable to do that?
This is a question about the grant to the Battle of Flowers, not about other grants.
I do agree. I believe
I disallow that question. Deputy Brenner.
Sir, may I ask a different question?
Yes, you may.
What are the criteria used to determine the amount of grant funding for large events such as the Battle of Flowers and Channel Island Pride?
So each event has its own criteria based on their business plan for that event, sir. And so the business plan for the event will result in a request from the event organisers for a certain amount of money, and then decisions are made according to that business plan.
Supplementary.
Could the Minister please share that criteria with States members? And also, if there is a similar number of attendees and public benefit to large events, should a similar amount of funding not be allocated?
Sir, such simplistic ways of thinking I don't think are appropriate for any event, sir.
Deputy Raneth.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister please just clarify whether all the money is going to the new organisation and not to pay off debts from the previous company involved, and whether those books have been balanced?
Sir, entirely the £160,000 that Deputy Tadier is referring to is entirely for the parade happening this year. It's entirely with regard to this new entity. And I have to say, sir, that this hasn't been an amount that's been handed over in one go. To date, I've provided a letter of assurance to the chair of Jersey Battle of Flowers Parades Limited, so that 80,000 stems could be ordered in time for this year's event. That was for a value of £32,800. And my officers have also recently released £17,569 for urgent payments for acts, marketing, glue, etc. The grant agreement between Jersey Battle of Flowers Parades Limited and the government is yet to be signed by the department. This will not be signed, and no further monies will be released until consent to host the event is received from the bailiffs panel. So we are staging the amounts of money and giving them on an as-needed basis to minimise any potential loss and risk that Deputy Tadier has well referred to, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, I thank the Minister for that clarification. He's partially answered my follow-up, but I wonder if he could give some assurance around due diligence that might have been conducted, in particular in relation to a new organisation. What process and assurances did he receive that they would be a good recipient of state's funds given what's happened in previous years?
It is difficult in the sense of, from a process perspective, there's no set process on this. This is a matter of trust between government, and as I've said before, trust in islanders and government is something that's really important. A low trust economy is a very expensive economy, and actually we've moved into a low trust economy, partly driven by the fact that government is requiring constant sets of processes, etc., which make life much, much harder. That said, we are working very closely with the Battle of Flowers Parades Limited to ensure that they are able to deliver what they said they deliver. This is a case of working together with them to make sure we have a really good battle parade taking place this year. And actually, if members are eagle-eyed and look around town with a keen eye, they'll start to see the beginnings of that parade taking shape already. So it looks very exciting indeed.
Final supplementary.
Yeah, thank you, sir. There's still lots of questions to ask, and I think it may be something we follow up from scrutiny. Sir, the ultimate question, I think, hasn't been actually answered, so I'll put it in my final supplementary, is that what was the advice that was given by the officer to the minister, and was that advice favourable ultimately to the grant being issued, or was that advice coming down on the side that, on balance, this grant shouldn't be issued at this time in this amount to this new entity?
Minister.
So my recollection is that the advice was, and the concern was about this being a brand new entity. But I, other ministers as well, want to see a battle parade going ahead this year. And so we need to back somebody to put on that battle parade, sir. In this case, it is that brand new entity, and the people involved in that entity are experienced Battle of Flowers coordinators, members, volunteers. And so, sir, we are just, we are trusting them to make sure that they deliver the parade they want, but we are doing that in a responsible way by limiting the payments to them on an as-needed basis, and making sure, like I said, from now, we need them to get the bailiff's permission to go ahead with the event that they've planned, and we hope they will get that soon, and they won't receive further monies until that permission is granted.
So there are only a few minutes left and 3 questions left, so supplementaries only from the questioner in relation to the last 3 questions. And question 16, Deputy Stevenson will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what steps have been taken by his department since his appointment to identify potential barriers to extending community access to school sporting facilities, set out any barriers that have been identified, and state what actions are being taken to overcome them?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm working with the Minister for Infrastructure and his officers and my officers to assess remaining availability for sports facilities that could be used to further improve community use. I do share the ambition to maximise the use of these public facilities, but it has to be achieved without impact on school use or safeguarding. And so I would say I cannot equate safeguarding as a barrier. Safeguarding is essential for our facilities in schools. So it's not a barrier, it's just a reality of what we have to do in order to keep schools safe. And there already, I must also say, sir, there is a huge use of the community in our school sports facilities. We recently had a joint meeting with the Minister and one of the heads, very, very positive meeting, where the head was telling us that his facilities are so booked out, he can't find a space for a 5-a-side team. So they are used extensively across our estate. But of course, it can always be better.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister perhaps, I think he's given one example there of a meeting that's taken place, but give some examples of the actual what is happening to make this happen, and are there any examples of successes or improvements, please?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so there's ongoing meetings between officers and ourselves. We've met, I think, 2 or 3 times. So some of the things are to receive from the schools, their timetable of when use is being needed by the school, to agree when those start times can happen. So, for example, finishing at 3:30, starting something else at 3:30 is not practical because there is time after that. So we have to look very, very careful at what those times are. Maybe needed till 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So that's happening. That's certainly happened across, I think, one of our schools. I haven't got the details of which schools, I'm afraid, but we can find out for the deputy. also, sir, I mean, we're discussing the future. I have to say, sir, that if Gas Place School was actually finished by now, which it should have been, there's a 5G pitch on top of that. So the new facilities that we're looking to plan would open community access for the rest, for the communities as well. There's certainly work going on across a number of our facilities from whose names I just can't remember the name of all of them, but there was a lot of work going on with a group of ministers. So, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Question 17, Deputy Coles will put to the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide details of the works being undertaken at the toilet block at West Park, including whether or not it will reopen as a toilet again and when the work is due to be completed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to report that the work at the West Park toilet is now complete. It's currently undergoing Legionella testing before the facility is reopened, which I hope will be next week. The work on the toilets has been aimed at improving accessibility, making them more durable and vandal resistant. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary? Well, question 18, Deputy Coles will put to the Minister for Health and Social Services.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, has been given to sending notifications to patients electronically, including in respect of appointments and confirmations that referrals have been received?
Minister.
Sir, I'm pleased to confirm that a great deal of consideration has been given to these matters, and if I may, I'd like to address the question in parts. Taking the second question first, I'm also pleased to say that work is currently underway to upgrade the hospital electronic patient record system, and this will include the ability to have a patient portal. Once deployed, this portal will allow patients to be notified of referrals and to make and amend outpatient bookings. Over time, it will include test and diagnostic results, and the current work schedule should allow for this to be rolled out during September of this year. As for the first part of the question, I'm afraid there are no direct electronic referrals between primary care, acute and off-island transfers, or discharges coming back to the island. Currently, this patient information is moved via email or worse still, printed paper, which is both inefficient and prone to error. Sadly, this situation has arisen due to a woeful lack of investment in digitising the wider health system over a number of years. With that in mind, we've recently developed a comprehensive but unfunded plan to address this and a much broader range of critical digital health issues. So I think members probably know that very soon I intend to ask the Assembly to consider funding for this vital work to be undertaken, so that in 4 years' time we don't end up in the embarrassing position of having a first-class £700 million hospital playing host to a disconnected and fragmented health service. But that will be a decision for the Assembly later in the year, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Yes, sir. Given that appointments and missed appointments, cost the service lots of money, and sending out paper notification also costs the departments lots of money, will the Minister confirm that this will be an ongoing priority in any budgeting?
Minister.
I think the best thing I can do is refer the Deputy back to the rather comprehensive offer that I gave in the first instance, sir.
We do have a few minutes left if any other member wishes to ask a question of the Minister in relation to this issue.
Yes, please, sir. I did put it in the chat.
Yes, sorry, I didn't see that. Do ask your question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister, although all of this work sounds absolutely fantastic, but what should he advise that patients should do in the meantime? As I'm hearing from patients who go to their GP informs them that they've been referred to a department, and they hear nothing from the department to even say that the referral has been received or whether they're on a waiting list. And sometimes some of these waiting lists are for routine appointments are over a year. So can the Minister advise what he thinks patients should be doing in the meantime when there are no communication sent out? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I think I made it quite clear in my initial answer that we do have problems, and that's why we need to address them. It's not something that can be done overnight. What I would advise patients to do in the meantime is to be as persistent as they can and make every effort they can to work their way through the system that we've got. There is no quick fix to this. I've noticed an awful lot of people in that situation choose to write either directly to me or to the assistant ministers, because our inboxes are full of these issues, and we try our best to direct people as best we can going forward. But as I say, there is no quick fix to this other than investing the money to get the job done properly, and that is going to take time. So, thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy Alves.
Yes, please, sir. So is the Minister happy for patients to get in contact directly with the departments to ensure that, at the very least, that they have some reassurance that those referrals have been received? Because I know that previously, even myself personally, I have received letters just as a reassurance to say we've received your referral and you're on a waiting list, but that hasn't happened now for at least a couple of years. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
I'll make the point again that I'm aware that there's a great deal wrong with the communications. We're meeting on this, it's mentioned now very, very frequently. As I say, we're trying to address things on a sort of piecemeal basis as we go forward, but we do need the structural changes. And I would advise patients to make whatever inquiries and make whatever phone calls that they can to wherever they can to make sure that they get the best care possible. So it's not an ideal situation, far from it, but we are looking to address it, sir.
Secretary Renniff.
So I was going to raise a point of order if the questions had finished, but...
Not quite. Final supplementary, Deputy Coles. The questions are finished.
So it was just to get in, ask for a ruling on a point of order under Standing Order 12, Part 4, regarding Part A of the answer to written question 298/2025. The question concerned when the Council of Ministers first became aware that the bomb threat had been received by Ports of Jersey on 4th of March, and to which ministers this notice was first given. The answer given states that ministers became aware of the reasons for the evacuation on March 5th, but it doesn't confirm whether ministers were told at this point that the bomb scare had been received the day before, and if so, which minister. Therefore, I'd like a ruling just to see whether what your view is on that.
So that's written question 298/2025. All right, thank you very much. Now move on to questions for the Minister for the Environment without notice. And the first question is from Deputy Jearn, then Deputy Tadier, then Deputy Miles, then Deputy Renniff.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the recent clearance of trees and vegetation at Flickay, Cedar Valley, can the Minister confirm whether an ecological assessment, as required under the Wildlife Jersey Law 2021, was carried out prior to the works? If so, will the Minister make that assessment publicly available? If they didn't conduct one, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And this site has been a site of public interest recently, mainly due to a video that was put up by the contracting party that did most of the work. Sir, the awareness of this was brought to the attention of my department on the 12th of June. Planning officers and compliance officers were not aware, however, until the 3rd of July. But we have conducted site visits. Land Resource Management have been on site. Planning officers and planning compliance officers have all been on site on the 3rd and 4th of July. And it's clear for anybody who's seen the video that extensive woodland and shrub clearance has occurred. But I would say to members, the Environment Department have investigated specifically regarding the wildlife law, and they've identified that very adequate checks for wildlife were undertaken. We have concluded that sufficient precautions were undertaken to ensure the works did not result in harm to wildlife. The removed trees included trees felled during Storm Ciarán, and we must remember, of course, that this particular part of the island was subject to a tornado. It was the last section of Jersey before the tornado left land and went out to sea. It's extensive damage. Also, that in the particular site, non-native sycamore and laurel trees were taken away, as well as tree stumps, which led, of course, to excavation work happening. No planning and building laws have been breached so far that we've been able to identify. I hope that's of use to the Deputy, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, and I thank the Minister for that comprehensive response, and for the officers that went quickly to go and check what's happened. In general, does the Minister believe that there needs to be more strengthening with enforcement and protections for trees, habitats and wildlife in Jersey, and if so, what steps will he take to make those enforcements and protections more robust?
Minister.
So we do have a tree strategy. We now have a tree advisory board in place, and I just reference that members on that board, National Trust, Trees for Life, Farmers Union, representatives of the agricultural industry with support from the Lieutenant Governor's Office. And recently we've added to that membership people from Sam Ray Manor, the Jersey Greening Foundation, officers from the Climate Emergency Fund, and the Construction Council. And the reason we're putting this team together is we want to do a number of things, and I'll get to the specifics of the Deputy's question in a second, but we want to look at special trees, we want to look at championing trees, we want to establish new woodlands, we want to plant, and the most importantly, the right tree in the right place. But finally, we want to look again at tree protection, and I know that's a subject which is close to very many people's hearts, including my own. We do have a process in place at the moment which I don't believe is quick enough and useful enough, but alternatively this Assembly has rejected some proposals in the not too distant past to protect a very large number of trees, and we have to find a way to do better. I'm very hopeful that this new tree advisory board are going to help me with that decision, and we'll come up with a better way to protect trees quicker in the future, sir.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. After a successful budget amendment to provide further resources for the West of Ireland planning framework, nothing seems to have happened. Could the Minister please update me where we are with the West of Ireland planning framework?
Well, sir, this is a piece of work that we've committed to do. My officers at the moment are at full stretch, but it's certainly on the list, and it will be a priority over other pieces of SPG work and planning work that needs to be done. But at the moment, I can't provide the Deputy with a specific timeline other than to say, yes, we had the debate, the importance of this area, the West of Ireland. It's important to have a proper planning framework for that, and it will get done as soon as we can possibly get round to it.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for the answer. Given that this would require quite a specialist resource, can the Minister tell us whether actually gaining that resource has been affected by, firstly, the recruitment freeze, and secondly, the restriction on the use of consultants?
Minister.
I don't think it'll come as a surprise to members of the Assembly that the consultancy freeze has affected my department quite significantly. We had a number of very large projects on the go, all involved consultants at the time, but this government is committed to try to reduce expenditure, and the decision was taken that we would not continue with consultants. That then meant that officers within the department had to take over the responsibility for that work. That meant that other pieces of work that they may well have been doing at the time were then they had to cope with it at the same time. So things have slowed down, there's no doubt about that. We're looking at every post, we're trying to save money, and we just have to accept the fact that when you do things like stop using consultants, the amount of work you can get through in a specific amount of time is reduced, and in some cases, significantly reduced.
Deputy Tadia.
Has the Minister been made aware, like I and St Bernard colleagues have, of the number of concerns relating to New Dunes La Poulante potentially breaching its use and being used for residential purposes? And if so, is that something that the Minister's department is looking into at an enforcement level?
Minister.
So this is another site of great interest to the public at the other end of the island. I've recently made a decision on appeal on one application. The Planning Committee only last week refused another application, and as the Deputy says, there has been some discussion around the use of the site currently. All I can say is, following the Planning Committee decision last Thursday, officers are now actively engaged in looking at the site to see what, if any, is occurring.
Supplementary.
And is the Minister hopeful that if a breach has occurred, because I understand that there's also a new structure, I've seen it myself, has been put down there, which which doesn't seem to have planning permission, can he assure the many members of the public who have been commenting on many fora that if there are breaches occurring here or elsewhere, they will be dealt with and appropriately and in a timely manner?
Minister.
As with any case, sir, if breaches are occurring, officers will compile the data as they would do in any situation. They will put a case together, and that case will be taken to the Attorney General's office for his decision on whether to pursue it in the public interest.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has said he intends to remove tuna from protection under the wildlife law and to apply to use a portion of the UK's tuna quota for commercial fishing. The UK quota is just 66 tonnes a year, and Jersey's portion of this will be tiny, maybe 3 or 4 fish a year. Therefore, given the tiny economic advantage for authorising commercial fishing in Jersey, what consideration did the Minister give to maintaining Jersey as a refuge for bluefin tuna, with a greater focus on the economic benefits of becoming known as a beacon for conservation?
Minister.
Sir, I'm hopeful that in the fairly near future, the island will be signed up to ICCAT, which is a convention on the conservation of bluefin tuna. We're going to have a discussion around that at the Council of Ministers in the very near future. But I think it's important that we sign up to this convention. All our neighbouring European countries are signed up, and it's a coordinated way of making sure that bluefin tuna are not exploited. But I want to be very clear, sir, that the North Atlantic bluefin tuna on our side of the Atlantic, the shoals that swim through not only Jersey's waters, but the waters of the south coast and the Irish Sea and further beyond and down into the Mediterranean at certain times of the year, are not on an endangered list. There are many, many thousands of these fish that swim around. And as such, we should really treat them in the way we treat the other fish in our sea. They're not an endangered species, and if they were, they certainly wouldn't be coming off the wildlife law or be treated in the way we intend. But the Deputy's quite right. If we're fortunate enough, and it's an if, we are fortunate to benefit from a small part of the UK quota next year in 2026. It will be a very small part. It may only result in a very small number of individual fish ever landing in Jersey. But I think it's an important piece of diversification for our fishing fleet, for our hoteliers, hospitality industry. And when we get there, if we get there, I will make the case, and I will argue forcibly that it's somewhere that we need to go. But as the Deputy says, it will be a very small number of fish that will be landed.
Supplementary?
Yes, so the Minister's answered a slightly different question, I think, which is why he thinks we should have some fishing of bluefish tuna. So I would return to my original question, which is what consideration as Minister for the Environment did he give to the potential advantages of Jersey being a beacon of conservation, and rather than sacrificing that reputation for a tiny, tiny economic advantage? What consideration did he give?
Minister.
So it's my very clear view that if we're going to do a good job of conservation of marine species in our waters, which I very much want to do, it's most important that we have management in place, we have regulations in place, we have laws in place in order to manage that. I can say to the Deputy that if we don't put these things in place for bluefin tuna, we will continue to have this fishery prosecuted illegally. Some small number of vessels are doing things in our waters with tuna that they may not should be. And I think regulation is the only way forward. We saw this with bass. 10 years ago, we had a very great shortage of bass in our waters. We brought in proper regulation. We put some limitations, some restrictions on, and we now see that the bass population is returning to where it might be. I am absolutely 100% behind management as a way of making sure that we keep enough of these species in our water, and I will always stand by that.
Deputy Moore. Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Apologies. Thank you, sir. Does the Minister agree that there are parallels with the recent findings of the Complaints Board report regarding a complaint made by a neighbour of Northern Leaf and the experiences of the neighbours of the St Peter's Technical Park? And if so, what directions has he given to his chief officer as a result of the criticisms of officials in the Complaints Board report?
Minister.
Sorry, sir, I was just looking for your indication to...
Sorry, I said Minister. I'm going to break my screen here, so I'm probably...
Oh, does that mean I can stop, sir?
It's 12:45 quite soon. We can carry on. We mended over lunch.
The Deputy asked some questions about the Complaints Board findings, and I have to say to Assembly members that in my portfolio I have the Regulation Department along with many other departments. That department administers and has to use, the last count, I think it was 39 different laws in order to regulate, and more often than not, we are the ones that end up fielding complaints and having to deal with complaints. So Statutory Nuisance Law 1999 is actively used in investigations with a focus on, and this goes all the way through the department, engagement, explaining, encouragement before we get to the enforcement part. And any possible action my team may be taking with regard to open cases is confidential, and I don't specifically want to talk about them individually. But recently, Complaints Board, the State's Complaints Panel, Complaints Board, indicated that the statutory nuisance law was weak and not fit for purpose, and I would absolutely refute that. The law itself and the thresholds for what is considered statutory nuisance remain unchanged, and we might conduct a review of this, but those principles would continue to mirror what we see in other jurisdictions. And it's important, before I sit down, I just want to state, it's important to acknowledge that statutory nuisance is a criminal level of nuisance, meaning that by its nature, a particularly high evidential threshold is needed. What we don't have in Jersey is a common law equivalent where people, individuals, private individuals, could take civil cases to the courts where they wouldn't be required to find such a great level of nuisance. But in response to the Deputy, I would say we do deal with a number of these instances. Statutory nuisance is something we have to prove, and it's a very, very high bar and difficult to do so.
That brings the first period of questions to an end.
The Deputy gave a very long answer there, and I do believe it would be fair to receive a supplementary answer.
Yes, well, I regret to say that the period for asking questions has come to an end, and for this minister, so I'm afraid I can't extend it under standing orders.
Sir, can I propose the adjournment?
Members content to adjourn? The State stands adjourned until 2:15.